o'clock hour to discuss the AFC and NFC championship games. I'm going to get real molecular with him, down into the granular details on the Philadelphia Eagles blocking schemes, just so you can hear the pleasure in the voice of a career offensive lineman when he gets to talking about a great offensive line in the NFL. James Peterson producing on the show today. James, how are you?
Doing good. Took a little personal day yesterday, so had a long weekend and feeling refreshed and good to go.
That's good. It's good. Hopefully it was the kind of day you get to take off to enjoy, and not a day you have to take off because of preponderance of other responsibilities.
No, it was just I was due for a day off. So I appreciated Zach being able to hold it down for me yesterday. So
maybe Zach's best day. Maybe Zach's best day.
Oh yeah,
in the
okay,
chair. Yeah,
awesome.
So,
Shout out to Zach.
Shout out to Zach for rising to the occasion yesterday. Look, Utah Jazz in action last night. Guess what, James? They didn't win. Breaking news.
Oh,
shocking! I was watching the game with my wife after we'd put the kids to bed, and she asked this question that it's not because she doesn't care about sports, but it's because the Utah Jazz have put themselves in this category. She was just like, we're watching, and she's like, why don't I even recognize half of these faces? Well, because the team is bad, and because there's a level of apathy that develops for a Utah Jazz roster when you know that they're not even trying to be good. Now, they're trying not to be good for the right reasons, but for a casual fan, and it's fair to call my wife a casual fan at this point because we have 3 young children and she doesn't have the bandwidth or the time to be a hardcore dedicated Utah Jazz fan. But for the casual fans of whatever team is not good, right? Whether you want to talk about an underperforming RSL or you want to talk about an underperforming Utah football team or you want to talk about a Utah men's basketball team that's having a harder time than we wish they were. Success is so drastically important to engage the casual fan. And my wife was just like, I remember a time in my life where I knew every person on every Jazz team. And this is my wife talking. And it's not her job to know these things. Obviously, it is mine. And I'm like, yeah, I know. That's what this community was around Utah Jazz basketball for a very long time.
That's what happens when you make the playoffs for 20 straight years.
That's right.
Like you know the players because they played in meaningful games. And this group, a lot of this group has only been here for 3 years tops, Lauri Markkanen being one of those, but there's also a good chunk of them that have only been here for a year and a half. So that's the other part of it. It's not just that they're not playing in meaningful games, but also they're just – a lot of these guys are so new.
It was a sobering thing for me watching that game. And the 2 most fascinating things about the game, James, and this tells you where the team is at right now, the 2 most interesting things about the Utah Jazz game last night were Andre Jackson getting ejected for the flagrant foul on Colin Sexton, which, again, for me, speaks to the need for basketball teams to have enforcers on the roster.
You're
especially
saying we need more Dylan Brooks and more Draymond Green, not less of them?
No, those
Is that
guys
what
don't.
you're saying?
Those guys don't count.
Okay.
You need like a Charles Oakley on every roster.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right. You need a guy on every roster that people are just like, ooh,
They're not.
I don't wanna.
Right. The guys who are actually doing hard fouls and fighting, not doing cheap shots and headlocks.
You need a Steven Adams on every roster.
Yes, Steven Adams is a good one.
Where people are just like, I don't want to mess with that guy.
Steven Adams has gotten to the point where he just has to walk towards you. And you're like, okay, I'll stop touching Ja when he was with the Grizzlies. I'll stop touching Ja Morant.
That's right. Steven Adams is that guy.
I'll stop touching Russell Westbrook, who's more jacked than you even. But
but like, it's funny because Steven Adams had this like aura about him because he was a giant Kiwi, but also because people knew the full backstory. Wasn't he like the youngest of 10 kids or something?
He's got a lot of siblings,
and he's actually tough. Like Steven Adams was actually tough. So you need, especially bad teams. I could understand why if you're the Boston Celtics or you're the Oklahoma City Thunder or you're the Cleveland Cavaliers and you think that this is your championship window, why you wouldn't want to use a roster spot on a guy who's not particularly great at basketball. And Steven Adams checked that box as well. He's a
really good basketball player.
More than adequate basketball player. He's a good basketball player. But I know that people get mad at me when I go too far into this, but I'm telling you, for a team like the Jazz, if you're the San Antonio Spurs, if you're the Utah Jazz, you should have someone on the roster right now whose job it is to make sure that garbage doesn't happen. And Andre Jackson, after the fact, he cooled off. He gave a little handshake, and then he went to the locker room. They are unmesswithable. You can't do that, especially to our young players, especially if you're the Spurs. You don't get to touch Victor Wembanyama, all right? That guy's protected. The Jazz, I guess you would say you're protecting who? You're protecting Lowry, maybe? But that was one thing. That was one thing that jumped out to me, like, okay, that was the most interesting moment of a game that was otherwise pretty uninteresting. And then, James, this is really telling you where things are at with the Utah Jazz right now in their race to the bottom. The second most interesting thing about the Jazz game last night was the fact that Conor McGregor was there in the audience and signing autographs for people, sitting front row.
Wow.
Conor McGregor, former UFC champion, crossover star. He did the boxing thing with Floyd Mayweather. Like, Conor McGregor is a big combat sports athlete. He did the Roadhouse sequel, right?
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
I didn't. But
you should.
I forgot that he was in that.
You should. It's terrible, but very entertaining.
Was he the Patrick Swayze character?
No, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Okay.
Jake Gyllenhaal is the Patrick Swayze
that's
character.
right. Okay, I remember the previews now. I don't remember that McGregor was in it though. That's awesome.
McGregor is the crazy guy. McGregor is like the bad guy's crony. And you know what? It's a perfect role for him because all he did was just act like himself on a cocaine binge, which I think is just his normal life. So Conor McGregor was in the stands last night, and that was like the second most interesting thing about a Jazz game that ended up resulting in another loss to the Milwaukee Bucks. Shout out the pride of Ogden and Oakland, Dame Lillard back in town. Always good to see the former Weber State Wildcat back in the borders of our lovely state. James, what's the best celebrity sighting? I put this out on Twitter. The best celebrity sighting at a Utah sporting event. 877-353-0700 if you want to text in, or at RealOC Sports if you want to weigh in on Twitter. The best celebrity sighting. You didn't have to actually be there.
Yeah,
but
if you're watching on TV and saw that they were at the stadium or the arena.
And like Post Malone probably doesn't count anymore because, he's a resident of the state. Ty Burrell, they always put the camera on him because he's a business owner and part-time resident of the state of Utah.
Yeah. There's actually been a good number of these kind of celebrity cameos, if you will, at Jazz games in Ryan Smith's tenure because he seems to know people who know people, and he intentionally, hey, come out to a Jazz game, I'll give you a jersey, and we'll promote whatever you want promoted. So the celebrity sightings at Jazz games have been good the last 3 or 4 years. McAfee was here when they were here for game day. 2 years ago, and they made a big deal about that. He and Ryan Smith are besties now. You see Ryan Smith on the McAfee show all the time now. T.O. was at a Jazz game a couple years ago, as in Terrell Owens signed a football, threw it in the stands. I think we saw anyway. There's been a number of particularly former pro athletes. Emmitt Smith, when he was in for the genealogy, what's the genealogy conference that happens at Sandy? He was here.
Wait, that was real?
That was real. Emmitt Smith was at a Jazz game a few years ago.
More surprising, Emmitt Smith was at a genealogy conference?
Yeah, he spoke it. I forget what it's called now. I'm sure we get lots of texts that tell me what it was, but he spoke it like it was I don't think it was church sponsored, but the church was very heavily involved in this genealogy conference, as you would think. at the Mountain America Expo Center, I believe.
No way.
Yeah, so he was a keynote speaker for this genealogy conference, and while he was in town, Ryan Smith said, "Hey, come, we'll give you Jazz courtside tickets." So they've had some really good former pro athletes, football players coming off the top of my head here that have been at Jazz games in Ryan Smith's tenure as owner. So he's trying to get it to be more of a talked about thing in celebrity circles, you can tell.
Roots Tech?
Roots Tech, that's it.
Roots Tech is the name of it. Shout out to 2861 for texting us on the Dish Pros text line, 877-353-0700. I put it out on Twitter, the best celebrity sighting. President Bush at the 2002 Olympics opening ceremony when he walked into the stands to sit with the athletes.
But does that also are we going to say that counts too, or are we going to say, because technically there was a ton of celebrity sightings at the Olympics here.
Well, I mean, there would be. They do count. Like the coolest celebrity sighting, if that's happened at the Olympics. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
President Bush at the opening ceremonies, yeah.
A young version of myself at the medals ceremony, one of the medals ceremonies, running into Steve Young. That was a big celebrity sighting for a senior in high school, Sean O'Connell.
Bob Costas getting denied entry to the Salt Palace because he didn't have his credential.
Because he had pink eye, probably?
No, we had a listener tell Bill Riley that story multiple times over text and on the phone. Tell him, yeah, I remember Bob Costas telling the story that he wasn't allowed in, and it's like, because he didn't have his credential, and he's like, I am Bob Costas, and they're like, sorry, you still need your credential.
David Hasselhoff at the 1997 NBA Finals.
I saw that comment. That's amazing. Leonardo DiCaprio was in the building for Game 6 of the 98 Finals.
Was
the
he?
infamous Game 6. There's a video, and Spence has told the story. Spence was a Jazz PR intern at the time and was tasked with escorting Leonardo DiCaprio into the Bulls locker room after they won the championship.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This
was like a year after Titanic.
That's one of the things, DiCaprio. Right? If you're talking about like Lakers games, you're going to see big-time celebrities that have nothing to do with the sports world, right?
Yeah.
Because they're at a Laker game. Oftentimes when we're talking about Jazz games or just sporting events in the state of Utah, period, the biggest celebrities are the sports dignitaries that are there, right? You talk about Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee is a huge star in the sports world. My mom would have no idea who Pat McAfee is, right? If Oprah is sitting courtside at a Laker game, nobody bats an eye. Jack Nicholson's got season tickets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those people, they're always there. Here in Utah, you get like, we know who the residents are. Like, Katherine Heigl made an appearance. I already mentioned Post Malone and Ty Burrell and those individuals, but there's just not that many. When you're talking about Jazz games especially, you're talking about, Michael Jordan's the most famous guy I've ever seen at a Jazz game, and he was playing.
When he was playing.
LeBron James is the most famous person we've ever seen, and he's playing. That's not it's a different dynamic with the celebrity sightings in the state of Utah.
It has. Ryan Smith is trying really hard to change that. We have gotten better ones, and it's not just the sports ones. Those are just the ones that popped off the top of my head as we started talking about this. But then the other times we've seen actual celebrities who are not playing in the games, who are not necessarily associated with sports at Jazz games, are those finals games here in Salt Lake too, because those were such huge events.
If you're into the celebrity sighting thing, this is the week, right? Because Sundance is still happening, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
The Sundance Film Festival. This is when you can get like some A-list celebrities in the state of Utah, flying their private jets in and maybe venturing down the hill to a Jazz game. If Ryan Smith is going to have an opportunity to get some big-time celebrities in town, this is the week you can do it.
Maybe get Demi Moore in there. Doesn't she have a Sundance film?
I don't know. Does she?
I've been hearing about a film that she's in. I have not seen, but I think it may or may not be in Sundance.
Okay.
Maybe we get Demi Moore sighting at the next Jazz game.
I would like that one.
Well, the Sundance is here. I could be completely wrong. Maybe it's not a Sundance film. I'm sure we'll get corrected if it's not.
Matthew McConaughey comes in for Sundance every now and again.
Yeah.
Wears a disguise.
Does he really?
Yeah. I used to work the doors at some events and one of the Main Street clubs up there. It was like a doorman. And Matthew McConaughey would wear a hilariously like the worst disguise, just like this Halloween quality trashy black wig.
Oh my gosh.
And sunglasses at night. And it was effective enough that he was oftentimes not recognized.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Just talking to people about how football is just an elaborate scheme to sell food.
I don't just a bizarre thing to be like. I mean, he
obviously still wanted to go out.
Yeah, he was going out.
So he's
walking around.
He's like, let me put on some ridiculous wig and some sunglasses.
And I guess it worked. It worked well enough.
So funny.
So Sundance
do you
is
think
good
he
for
would
the
do
celebrity
that?
sightings,
Do you think he would do that? He'd tell Ryan Smith, "Yeah, I'll go to your Jazz game, but I have to wear my disguise.
I have to wear my terrible disguise."
And you can't, when you show me, you can't put the graphic that says Matthew McConaughey on the video.
Just
board.
zoom in and put a question mark under the name. You guess who the celebrity is. That would actually be a fun game.
Masked Singer style celebrity sightings at Jazz games.
That would be so good.
That'd be a great timeout game.
You're welcome.
You get invite Sean O'Connell or whatever season ticket holder to try to guess the celebrities.
Andrea Urban still does the in-arena stuff.
Yes.
Right? Get Andrea Urban on the phone and tell her we have an idea for her.
We call it Masked Celebrity.
She needs to go up to Sundance and just be like, hey, I've got front row Jazz tickets for you. You just have to show up and wear a wig and sunglasses and, I don't know, ridiculous makeup or something.
We'll have a fan try to guess who you are.
Who was the 877-353-0700? At a Utah football game a couple of years ago, one of the Pac-12 championship years, I believe, one of the Victoria's Secret models was in the stands.
Really?
Like not even in like a particularly great seat. And it was because she was dating a Utah, was dating a guy who's like an incredibly handsome male model from the state of Utah. I can't remember which one it was. Brazilian gal, I believe. And I remember there being an uproar at the game and post game.
Is it Chanel Iman, maybe?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's when I Googled the model dating Utah man. That's the first thing.
Oh, right.
I don't know.
Okay, which one? Alessandra Ambrosio. I think that's who it was. I'm pretty sure it was her just sitting random. And if I'm not mistaken, please refresh my memory, Ute fans out there, 877-353-0700. I think this gal was sitting, and it was like a cold game. It wasn't like the glamorous game to be at. Like beanies and hoodies and winter coats and stuff like that. Gosh.
Was it a Santa Clara game then? It was not an Allegiant Stadium.
This was at Utah.
Oh, I thought you said at a Pac-12 championship.
No. This
Pac-12 championship years.
This was one of the Pac-12 championship years. This was at Rice-Eccles Stadium.
Oh my goodness!
In like October or November, I think. That's a pretty good one.
That is a good one.
Like that's up there.
That was also a dangerous thing to Google on a work computer. I just realized. Thankfully, just a name popped up.
It's all right. You're the boss. You can justify it. Hey, if you're at work and you're listening right now, and it doesn't come to the front of mind, don't start Googling.
Yeah.
Don't start Googling.
Or use your phone instead of your work computer, baby.
Make sure you're not signed into the work Wi-Fi. All right. Yeah. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. I don't want anything untoward to happen as the result. But
no, I did not know that story. That's a good story.
Someone will text me in. In any case, the Utah Jazz, which is the source of this discussion, the Utah Jazz basketball right now, it's a big ask to be drawn in and to be engaged for an entire game and to be watching a roster full of guys that you hope are going to be part of a rebuild in the future. We had Andy Larson on yesterday, and the speculation of like what this team can be in 3 to 5 years is just such a tough thing. It's why the Utah Hockey Club, Ryan Smith is lucky that he owns both, because that club is closer to playoff contention. And right now, I can tell you this. We could all realize this. Right now, sports fans in Utah, there's like each fan base is 10%. I will never waver. I will never change. My support is 100% no matter what happens. That's like 10% of each fan base, right? And then there's like 75% of each fan base that's just like, look, I'm going to love this team, especially when it's great. I'm going to watch most of the games. I'm going to spend money. I'm going to buy gear, especially when they're good. And then there's like whatever the remaining percentage is that are just like, I'm just here so I don't get fined. I'm here because my spouse or significant other wants me to be here, because I was raised in this fan base and I haven't bothered to jettison myself from the bandwagon at this point. That 10% is never going to change. There are 10% of Utah Jazz fans who are going to keep renewing their season tickets and are going to keep doing this thing no matter how long it takes, no matter how difficult it is, and no matter how lucky or unlucky you get with the upcoming draft lottery, no matter how well you manage the moves that have to happen in the next week before the NBA trade deadline, all that stuff. There's only like 10% of those people that care enough that your fandom comes with impunity. Everybody else, watch it on television, even those of us, it's their job. Everybody else sitting in those seats, like, you start making the food too expensive, that Toyota Club seat doesn't have the free Skittles downstairs or whatever, that stuff starts to crack and starts to waver. And that's where the Utah Hockey Club, a team that is closer to contention, is weirdly a threat to the Utah Jazz in the fandom, as we've talked about on this show before, because it's not hard to stay engaged with that team right now. It's not hard, even though you don't know their names and you don't know their faces the same way. There are, 80% of that Utah Hockey Club team could walk around in downtown Salt Lake City and not be recognized. Unfortunately, the same is true of the Utah Jazz right now.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, I was actually had some friends over watching the AFC championship game on Sunday, or those games on Sunday, and one of them, who is a lot more of a casual Jazz fan, was like asking me questions of, hey, when will they be good again? And I'm like, well, if they get Cooper Flagg, they could be good as soon as next year. If they don't, depends on how good the player they get in the draft is. And who's even going to be on the team next year? Like, and I didn't say Jordan Clarkson. She goes, did you miss Jordan Clarkson? I'm like, well, he might be on the team, but that just showed me that's still the one that the casual fans, that's still the guy that casual fans, maybe the only guy they remember because he was on the last really good Jazz team.
And he hasn't played for 2 months.
Right. Like, oh, did you say Jordan Clarkson? Nah, because he probably won't be on the team, but we'll see. Also, but it just struck me as that's the guy that a lot of the fan base and that 75% you're talking about are still latched onto. Oh, yeah, I remember he's still on the team.
Yeah. It's just a wild time to be Jazz fan.
If Royce O'Neal, even though he wasn't nearly one of the best players on the team, if he was still on the Jazz and it wasn't Jordan Clarkson, they'd be like, oh, I remember Royce O'Neal's on the team.
George Niang, the guy with the minivan?
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's what we do. Like, and we're unfamiliar with that in this market. We think that we always know all the Jazz players if we call ourselves a Jazz fan, because we're not used to multiple years in a row Jazz not making the playoffs. We're used to them playing in April and May and sometimes June just about every year. And if not, maybe there's a year or two in a row that they don't. This is year 3, and this is a totally new thing.
Before we take a break here, Gordy Chase is going to swing by, and we're going to talk some hoop. This text coming in from 0910 at our Dish Bros text line, 877-353-0700. Always welcome your feedback. This probably doesn't count for you two. Maybe it does. I think all the World War II veterans that get acknowledged at Jazz games are the best celebrity sightings, even though they will never see themselves as that. Look.
Freaking awesome. What a text.
World War II veterans, they're not celebrities, okay? Celebrity is sort of implies all it means is fame. It doesn't mean anything else. It doesn't mean anything good or bad about you except that you're famous. The World War II veterans, they're not famous. They're not celebrities. I see what you're trying to say. And when I say they're not celebrities, I mean they're better than celebrities. There's
substance to these guys.
That is they're unicorns at this point, right? Most of them are not surviving anymore. The few that do remain, we should cherish and get their stories and write everything down. You're absolutely right. Better than celebrities. So, I don't even put them in the same category as celebrities because, would I rather have lunch or dinner with Conor McGregor, who is a celebrity sighting that was there last night, or a living World War II veteran? It's not even close. It's not. They're not even in the same. It'd be like, cool, Conor, I'll see you around the way.
Yeah.
Have fun. Go do your thing. I don't care. A living World War II veteran, yes.
Yeah.
Every day of the week, you want to talk to that person. So,
and that's in the same vein as one of my favorite things at Jazz games is when they'll do that. They'll recognize veterans of any kind, but the World War II veterans are certainly special. But also when they recognize the cancer survivors. Probably my favorite thing about Jazz. Yeah,
get a little dust in your eye.
They have
at
them.
A Jazz
they
game?
have them ring the bell on the court or in the concourse like that. It's amazing, but that's not the same thing as what we're talking about. So we could hold them at high esteem and say they should be held as high as celebrities. Sure, you can say that, but we're talking about actually famous people.
The veteran and the cancer survivor, that's a different category. That's an acknowledgement that you're just like, oh, that is feel good. That's incredible. Seeing Conor McGregor at a game is just like, all right, I don't even know if I like this guy. You know what I mean? Yes, he's famous, but he's a controversial character. But you're just like, oh, that's a water cooler conversation piece. Saw Conor McGregor at the game last night.
On the video board, I didn't actually say hi to him.
You know what's so funny is they showed him walking around and he's on the floor, right? He's front row seat or whatever, and he's signing if you have the really good tickets, it's like a lanyard.
Yeah.
With a plastic identification card, basically.
The pass that says you get to go to the clubs on court level.
It's you're wearing a lanyard that shows everyone you have a lot more money than they do, okay? And Conor McGregor is going around and he's walking up to people and he's, they're handing him their little lanyard and he's signing the cards on the lanyard. So I was just thinking of what a funny souvenir piece that is, especially because I watched 5 minutes of this interaction he was having. James, I promise you, there is no way on this earth that 80% of the people who he was signing autographs for knew who he was. There was just, he's very famous.
They just saw people. They saw other people asking for autographs. They're like, oh, that's a guy who probably should have his autograph.
He's very, very famous. But watching 70-year-old men that are sitting there because that's to afford those seats, you're probably a business owner. You're probably pretty well established in your life. A lot of those guys, in their tucked-in button-down shirt at the Jazz game,
approaching Conor McGregor
getting a Conor McGregor autograph. They're not doing it because they want a Conor McGregor autograph. They're probably my grandson might like this.
I don't know who this guy is, but he's famous. My grandson will probably know him.
He's got a wild accent. All right, I think I saw that guy on the Roadhouse remake. It was just funny to watch because there are certain celebrities that transcend all social statuses, right? Your age, your social standing, your class, your economic whatever. There are some people who are just famous to everyone in the world. Conor McGregor is not there yet, right? He's not on that plane yet. My dad wouldn't know who Conor McGregor was if he saw him. He'd just be like, who's that guy? And so he'd be like, oh, he's a fighter. He's an Irish fighter. And then my dad might be able to put it together. There's no way my dad is just be like, hey, Conor, give me your autograph. So I got a kick out of that, watching a bunch of people who may or may not know who he is ask for his autograph.
My son He knows his son would love Conor McGregor's autograph,
Yes.
though, so he'd go and get it for you.
He would. He would. Hey, pal, I got you a Conor McGregor autograph. Oh, cool. Thanks, Dad. Appreciate that. Cool.
So he knocked me out a couple times. So
It's just,
I got his autograph on my face.
that's weird. Anyway, Gordy Chiesa next. We got a lot coming on the Sean O'Connell show. Again, we got red and blue. I got a text about red and blue also. We're going to get to that when we get to the red and blue. Just Jerem Jordan is a renaissance man. He does a little bit of everything. You'll find out what I'm talking about in 28 minutes. The Sean O'Connell show with Gordy Chiesa next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
A lot more aggressive on those drives. Getting into the bigs.
5-point game stolen. Keontae finds, sends a ball. Oh, what a beautiful play.
Bryce Sensabaugh to Colin Sexton from last night's loss for the Utah Jazz. 125-110 to the Bucks on the home floor. That sound courtesy of Smith Entertainment Group Media. Craig Bowlerjack and Thurl Bailey on the call as always. Talking Jazz hoop, NBA hoop, everything going on in the basketball world. Our good friend Gordy Chiesa, our resident expert, stops by. Gordy, how are you?
Oh, see, I'm doing fine. Thanks.
What did you see that you liked from the Utah Jazz last night, even in a loss?
Well, they played really hard defensively, and the Bucks were top of their game, so it wasn't a lack of effort by the Jazz. So what I like about the Jazz was how they came ready to play mentally, and I do like how just generally speaking, that they're coming together as a group. So that's encouraging. Isaiah Collier, him being a starter now, OC, he's really helped the Jazz as far as ball movement, including his 8 assists last night. So he did a good job of moving the ball, stealing the ball, and timely scoring. So I like they made that change now with Isaiah Collier as the starter and using off the bench Keontae George.
What's the atmosphere like around a team in a locker room right now with the trade deadline rapidly approaching and your team probably, putting some guys on the market, so to speak?
Yeah, it's very tenuous. Absolutely. The players are very conscious of it because just think about it. For some of those guys, their lives are going to be uprooted, where maybe their children are in the first or second grade, and now the father of their children, the father now has to move away to a new city in the middle of the season, and so it's on everybody's mind. However, trades are part of it. And as I always counsel players, when one team trades you, that means the other team wants you badly. And so that's all part of it. So it's how you view it and how you accept your new role.
So as this team figures out what it's going to do to offload talent, they also added a piece, at least a familiar name, although he's a little long in the tooth by NBA standards. Isaiah Thomas, two-time All-Star, he signed with the Stars, with the G League affiliate for the Utah Jazz at age 35. Last season, he played some G League games and then got called up to the Suns. How realistic is another NBA run for Isaiah Thomas?
Very much. Where, again, there'll be injury to a team that will like a off-the-bench spark plug. And so Isaiah Thomas, a two-time All-Star back in 2016-17, he played in G League last year, and he excelled, 32 points a game. So the Suns signed him. The way he played out, he really didn't play much there. However, a new season, it just takes one injury away where a guy gets called up. So he's playing for the Salt Lake City Stars, OC, to showcase that he's still got game. And he's a fun guy to be around and watch play. And he can score the ball against a lot of people. And that's what makes him so intriguing. So it's realistic that if not for the Jazz, definitely for a playoff-type team.
So as the Jazz, continue their season of trying to develop but not win too many games, and you face teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, who they're in a different outlook right now. That's a team that wants to be playing better basketball than they are. They want to be in championship contention. They've got a couple of superstars on the roster. How active is a team like that going to be with the approaching trade deadline?
Oh, very much. When I watched the game last night, Dame Lillard played sensational. He was in a twilight zone as far as being a shooter. But I kept on saying to myself, what happens if Dame gets hurt? Who is their backup point guard? Now, I know Giannis has the ball a lot of times top of the circle making plays. I call Giannis a stampede driver as far as the way he just pulls his way to the basket, and he's tremendous at it. So a team like the Bucks would be in play to try to get a backup point guard just as an insurance policy. So Andre Jackson, you like him as a two guard, but as far as in a playoff situation, and DeLon Wright, former Utah player, hardly plays for them. So they'll be in the market to try to get a backup point guard.
Gordy Chiesa, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking to the Utah Jazz and NBA basketball. It would not be a complete conversation if we didn't check in on the drama unfolding with the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler. You have been telling me for weeks that this situation has reached its head, and you cannot continue coexisting these two teams. Now a third suspension in the last few weeks. This one is an indefinite suspension after Butler walked out of a shoot-around after being told he was not going to start. And now are they willing to unload Jimmy Butler for less than his market value just to get him out of there?
Yes, they will. So instead of getting on the $1.70, now they're down to 50 cents on the dollar. Remember now, he's under contract this year, and next year is that awful thing as far as a team standpoint. It's a player option at $52.4 million, and so that the team that does trade for him, they have to be relatively certain that Butler's going to re-sign with them. So now the question is how much? A lot of money, $52.4 million. You like Butler. You do like his game. When he's head straight, he's really a top-tier player. However, the last year or so, it's been erratic behavior, and that's when it gets very interesting. But the Heat are highly motivated to try to move him on. Everyone keeps talking about possibly that it'll be a third-team switch where Butler goes to the Suns, and the Suns, the Heat get a Bradley Beal, and the third team would be the Raptors as a facilitator because they're under the luxury tax that they can do maneuvers, help teams out as far as trying to get future assets. So we'll see how it plays out. And for the listeners right now, it's going to be a critical time. And the Jazz might be involved in the trading deadline also, OC, as far as moving some of their guys. So the trading deadline for the listeners right now is Thursday, February 6th. But, Sean, the biggest day in Jazz basketball recently will be Monday, May 12th. That's the draft lottery selection order. And so that's the day that all the Jazz fans are looking at to see how it plays out, the lottery gods.
I believe right now Jazz with the second best lottery odds, worst record in the West, not worst in the NBA. And we've talked about this every time we've had you on, the desperation to find the right balance in developing your talent and getting players to kind of buy into what you're doing while also making sure that you ensure yourself the highest possible odds in that upcoming draft lottery. Now that you're kind of comfortably in that 1, 2, 3 spot race, does it change the way you conduct practices? Does it change the way you game plan, knowing that you're where you want to be when that draft lottery comes around? Because obviously you start playing too much better, you're not in that position anymore. You play too much worse. I mean, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world if fans stop buying tickets for a few months, but like, do you do anything differently now that you're right in that Goldilocks zone?
Yeah, you would play the younger guys slightly more. So absolutely that you would. So all these guys that are first, second-year players for the Jazz, they would get extra practice time as far as getting reps, and that they would get the benefit of the doubt of actually playing time. Because as you go forward, you want to be almost sure who you're going to try to keep the next 2 years, who you might move on or just fall through the cracks. Now, Sean, there's one interesting part of this. Oh, by the way, some teams don't cooperate. So the Wizards have lost 14 straight games in a row. Sean, 14 in a row. And so they're not cooperating in this whole thing. And the Nets have lost 7 in a row. The Jazz have lost 6 in a row. So we'll see how it all plays out as far as the trading deadline. With the Wizards, they're losing, but they do have some interesting assets. So for example, I mentioned about the Bucks. Malcolm Brogdon is a very good player for the Wizards. Unfortunately, his team isn't winning. He'd be a classic example of the Bucks trying to get someone like him again. Or Kyle Kuzma, former Utah Utes player. He'll be in play. And then Jonas Valanciunas, a young big guy at the Lakers. Think they need to help Anthony Davis out. They need one more big body in a playoff run. So the Wizards, besides losing, they do have a few guys that are really desirable for playoff-type teams.
Kuzma has apparently made it known that he's not really willing to wait around in Washington anymore. It's so funny because to me, he seems like an incredibly young guy, but in NBA years, he's kind of at that midpoint potentially of his career, and feels like it might be time to start serving his own needs as much as serving a team's needs. When a player comes out and makes their desires known in that regard, it is a very player-led and player-centric league in the NBA. Is there any downside to somebody like Kyle Kuzma saying, like, hey, look, I don't want to be part of this rebuild anymore?
No, not at all, because the Wizards know that already. And that Kyle Kuzma, and your point is well taken, Sean. Kyle Kuzma, he'll turn 30 years old on July 24th. Ironically, that's Karl Malone's birthday. And by the way, that's Pioneer Day, in case you're wondering. All right, so he's 30 years young, emphasize young. And so this is the height of his career as far as economically. And there's no fun losing. Just think about losing 14 straight games on those airplane rides at above sea level, 35,000 feet on a losing streak, what it's like on that plane or in the lobby or before a game. And these are all things that besides the physical part of it, it's the mental. Now, I know, I get it. The players are well compensated. Absolutely. Once in a lifetime money. It's almost like Monopoly money. However, they are human beings. And that's when it gets very interesting. So his Kuzma's contract, Sean, he makes this year $23.5 million. He makes next year 25, 26, 21.4, and then it downscales again to 26, 27, 19.4. So in his contract, there's 2 years left. He does have talent. He needs a jump start in his career. He might be out there on February 6th.
So as we've talked about several times, the Jazz seem like they're kind of on the plane with these other teams in the West that are trying to rebuild, and maybe next year you're not a contender. Maybe 2 years from now you're not a contender, but in that 3 to 4 year timeline, you're hoping that you can be inching toward the top of the Western Conference. That's where the San Antonio Spurs are at. How active do you think the Spurs are in the trade deadline?
Active, yes, they are. Now with the Spurs, they're the model franchise. Now if this year, if they don't make the playoffs, it will be the 6th straight season of the Spurs not being in the playoffs. And so that's how hard it is to, one, make the playoffs, and it's very, very difficult to get past the first round consistently. And to get to the elite level, you need a whole bunch of talented players that play as a unit and in luck. So the Spurs, they've done a lot of great things for it, but they still need more as far as playing. They tried to piecemeal it with Chris Paul, who turns 40 on May 6th, and he's done a good job for them. But the fact of the matter is that he's a lesser player than he once was. So Wembanyama, who is a generational talent, they need help there. And so we'll see what they do as far as, if not the trading deadline, definitely next summer.
Gordy, what's on your list today?
All right, Sean. The other day, you and I were you were in a different part of the world, and we kept Wilt Chamberlain was on our mind. So I tried to figure a list today where Wilt Chamberlain isn't number one. So this is the criteria. What a criteria! Wilt Chamberlain career-wise is not number one on this list. So I thought about shooting. So Sean, this is the top 10, and this is just opinionated by me now. So this is just you and I talking as far as about this list. The NBA greatest off-the-glass bank shooters. So, Sean, picture going glass in a pickup game with you and your friends, and it's the NBA, the greatest of all time. Bank shooting is a lost art, yet it's a hip shot. When guys this generation go off the glass, I call them hipsters, and it's based on a side angle, and it's a shooter's – the angle and the glass are a shooter's best friend. All right, here we go. The 10 all-time greatest ever bank shooters. Number 10, George Iceman Gerving, going glass. Number 9, Tony Parker of the Spurs, going glass. Number 8, Scottie Pippen, off the glass. Number 7, all right, Wilt Chamberlain. is the seventh, in my opinion, was the seventh greatest ever bank shooter. Also, he mastered the art form of the finger roll as far as the signature basket. Number 6, Dwayne Wade, all time. Number 5, from the Celtics, one of the most unbelievable players of all time, John Havlicek, going glass. Number 4, his signature bank shot was a step-back banker. He was the first big guy that could really go outside and go glass off a step-back, and that's Dirk Nowitzki. Number 3, Bill Walton. Number 2, Mr. Fundamental. We all saw him play, and for decades, he played for the Spurs for 20 years, Bill Walton, and the number 1 ever greatest bank shooter of all time. This guy, before I say his name, Sean, he used to bank him in playoff games with people hanging on him in Game 7, and the last possession is Sam Jones. He retired in 1969. I know it's yesteryear, but there's nobody close to him as far as him going glass. So the Celtics, traditionally, they taught, as far as culturally, they would go glass. What about Jazz basketball? Here's the 3 all-time greatest Jazz bank shooters. Number 3, Mehmet Okur. Number 2, Bojan Bogdanovic. And the greatest ever Jazz bank shooter, number 1, is Jeff Hornacek.
Gordy, the bank shot is considered to be not as cool as other shots. Like, what's your stance in coaching with the bank shot?
Well, it's the angle, and also it's your shooting touch. And so a lot of times you're out on the left or right side, and you're about 15, 16 feet. And it's more advantageous to go glass than go straight rim. And also when you go glass and you have a feathery touch, it gives the people a chance to offensive rebound better. So a lot of it is the angle of doing it, though. But it's a lost art. But in playoff games, sometimes in playoff games against a double team, they're coming at you from the side angle. You have to go glass to get the shot attempt. Usually, a lot of times, people go bank shots on a short clock with a possession. I'm saying do it naturally whether it's a short clock or not. That's your go-to move at from 15, 17 feet.
Gordy, I love it. As always, appreciate your time. Talk soon.
Sure, I'm looking forward to see your bank shot someday.
I don't have any other shot. I just chuck it up, and hopefully it can hit the bank board because I'm definitely not going to swish anything in. That's just how it is. Bad basketball player.
That. Great. Peace out. Stay well.
That's Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA expert. All right, Hot Lunch is coming up next. I put a poll question out about which NFL new hire is going to have the most success. We'll get into a little debate there, although it seems like an obvious answer according to the poll results. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. ESPN 792.1 FM Cash Kickoff is here. Text SPEND to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win $1,000 cash. This is a nationwide contest. SPEND to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. That is SPEND to 508-777-1000. Hot lunch here on the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll make it brief because we've got Red and Blue with Jerem Jordan coming up. Talk a little BYU hoop, talk a little Utah hoop, and what's going on as Senior Bowl practices and East-West Shrine game practices are underway. The college football all-star games are happening as the pre-draft process is something we begin talking about this week on the Sean O'Connell Show. James, I put a poll out there about which new hire in the NFL will have the most success. Again, only 4 options on polls. So I excluded Vrabel and I excluded Ben Johnson. Those guys, I think, are in slightly better situations personnel-wise than some of these other teams. Pete Carroll, Schottenheimer with the Cowboys, Liam Cohen with the Jaguars, or Aaron Glenn with the Jets. Which of those guys has the most success in their new head coaching position? Not this season, James, when it's all said and done, because this is not a one-year trip for any of these guys. At least it's not supposed to be a one-year trip for any of these guys, although it was for a couple of head coaches in the NFL this past cycle. Where would you cast your vote, James Peterson?
I voted Pete Carroll, and it's probably because he's the only established head coach out of this group. And we've seen it before. We've seen the success before. The Raiders don't have a lot of talent, but I do like what they have started to do organizationally. Tom Brady seems to have put his fingerprints on the organization as best as he can, and that's one of the greatest winners in team sports right there. So I like, I guess, the vibe around the Raiders right now.
Fair.
And we've seen Pete Carroll do it before with the Seahawks, so that's why I chose Pete Carroll. The rest of these guys, they've been good coordinators, but they got to prove that they can be good head coaches.
Aaron Glenn set up for failure going to the Jets. That just stinks. Although Woody Johnson did finally come out publicly and say, hey, I have to be better as an owner. Yeah. That's the first time we've seen self-awareness from any owner in the New York market.
You got to give him some credit for that, but also it makes me laugh because I'm like, you think, buddy? Like, I don't know.
That's an unenviable job because you got to go in there. And I guess the fact that you got hired means you have the Aaron Rodgers stamp of approval, but now maybe you got to worry about that. That sucks. Interestingly, the Jaguars don't have a bad roster.
No, roster-wise, they probably had. I mean, they and the Cowboys probably had the best job or the best jobs available roster-wise, right?
Yeah. Now Lawrence, to be determined.
Yeah,
right.
He's shown a lot. He's left a lot to be desired for sure.
The most pressure is certainly on Schottenheimer because the Cowboys,
because they're the Cowboys,
and it felt like kind of a fifth choice type situation where they interviewed a bunch of people. They were going back and forth with folks. I'm sad that it's not Deion down there in Dallas. That would have been amazing. I also would have liked to see Deion with the Raiders.
Or even the Jets. I told you before I would have loved to see Deion with the Jets.
I did see a hilarious meme about Pete Carroll this morning. Someone was like, I think that Pete Carroll's mission in life is to just follow Jim Harbaugh around and make his life miserable.
Oh.
And it was like, oh, yeah, because they coached against each other in college, and now they're divisional opponents again. They were divisional opponents when Carroll was with the Seahawks and Harbaugh was with the 49ers. So I wonder how much rivalry those two guys feel with one another. Stanford, USC, Niners, Seahawks, and now Raiders, Chargers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also his mission in life to just chomp the crap out of every piece of gum he's chewing. Just completely destroy it.
Oh, I do not like an open-mouth chewer. I do not like that one bit, James. Triggered by that whole thing.
Early grievance.
Only
Tuesday, OC.
We'll get to grievances on Friday. Save your grievances for Friday. All right, Red and Blue coming up next. Jerem Jordan is going to join us here in just a second. Reminder for all of you folks out there looking for a great Valentine's gift, maybe for the hat lover in your life. You've got 2 weeks to pick out the perfect Valentine's gift. So I'm going to give you the plug right now. Wood and Grail, locally made hats, stylish, incredible attention to detail, high-quality materials. Woodandgrail.com really has an incredible selection, and they continue to add more brands, add more teams, add more official licensing agreements. But they've got Utah, Utah State, BYU, even UVU covered. Bunch of the Big 12 teams. Woodandgrail.com. I would go with the suede material. It is. I got the red hat, the U hat with the suede material. It is the nicest hat that I own by far.
You'd say it's pretty suede.
It's James. Don't do that. Not what Wood and Grail has paid us for our time. Okay. Woodandgrail.com. That's wood, the letter N, grail.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll learn all the releases before they happen. You'll get exclusive discounts. Sign up and tell them OC sent you at woodandgrail.com. Red and Blue with Jerem Jordan next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Well, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM, brought to you every day by our good friends at Les Schwab Tires. The tires, the wheels, the accessories for whatever it is that you drive. Give them a call or stop by. Let the professionals there get the job done right the very first time at Les Schwab Tires. Time to talk a little red and blue, BYU and Utah, with Jerem Jordan, our resident BYU insider, friend of the program. Jerem, welcome. How are you?
Sean, what up, brother? I'm excited for a big game day down in Provo against Baylor, man.
So let's talk about this this Baylor matchup. What are the keys to victory in your mind for this BYU squad against a very athletic, tough Baylor squad?
Yeah, if BYU can continue to play like they have in the second half against Colorado and Cincinnati, man, they are in business. But certainly the level of competition cranks up at Baylor. Baylor always has good guards. Excited for the lottery projection matchup of BJ Edgecombe and Yegor Demon. We'll see tonight if Jeremy Roach is back or not. He's been out with concussion. And then Langston Love's been out since playing Utah on New Year's Eve with an ankle. So we'll see if those guys are back or not. BYU made 11 of 15 threes in the second half. That was incredible against the Cincinnati team that Utah will see tonight. Top 10 defense. They force you to just truck through the mud on offense, but BYU got out in transition, pushed it a little more. That's been a thing that Kevin Young has said. Hey, we got to play with a little more pace. Sounds easy, but it's just hey, just make an effort to do that, to run on make or miss. And then BYU has found the right guys. Richie Saunders playing at an incredible level right now, top 4 in the Big 12, and points per game in conference, 3-point shooting, field goal percentage, threes made per game. He's getting a little dark horse NBA love out there, which is fun. So 30 NBA scouts from 15 different teams going to be in the house tonight.
Did that loss to Utah, unexpected, I'm sure, down in Provo, did that provide a needed wake-up call for this team? I mean, they have played better against Colorado and Cincinnati.
When they lost to TCU on the road, that was like a slap in the face. And then they came home and that was a 3-game losing streak. Then they beat Oklahoma State. It was like, okay, are they good again? Then they went up to Utah. So they had kind of consecutive Saturday road losses that were disappointing. So the win at Colorado, certainly after the Utah game, there's a heightened sense of, hey, we got to win. We've lost 4 or 5. We can't get behind in the league. So certainly I think it was, helpful in sort of creating urgency. But, yeah, the Cincinnati win kind of showed us a little more where Cincinnati was ranked to start the season and for a couple weeks, and they had a top 10 defense, and they're still pretty good. So it shows that the BYU offense is clicking the last 2 games, which is good. Baylor has very similar numbers to BYU. So I'm intrigued, man. BYU's 26-3 at home the last 2 years. Tough place to play. I expect BYU to win. I expect it to be difficult to do so, but the way BYU plays at home and the way they played the last 2 games, you got to like BYU's chances.
I can't decide if the conversation around Yegor Demon and in my own thoughts about his game are fair to him, or whether we should be like, hey, look, this is a freshman trying to play a very tough position in a very tough league while he's also adjusting, to being over here in a new culture and all these different kinds of things. He's a good player. When we talk about lottery picks, it probably is where it gets unfair for me. When we talk about guys who are in that lottery pick discussion, I just expect them to walk out onto a basketball floor and for me to look at it and say, oh, yeah, he's head and shoulders above everyone else. And there are times where he looks like that, and there are times where he doesn't. Are we being fair with the expectation of Demon and I guess the growth of his game through the course of this season?
I think the draft experts know this better than we do, and they're screaming that he's a lottery pick still. And I think we think this is like, I don't know, growing up, like we saw 3- and 4-year guys, and they would come out and you were familiar, and they averaged more points per game. Like it wasn't on this sort of potential crutch that exists now, right? It's like, well, yeah, in 3 years, if Yegor Demon stays in college, what would his numbers be? That's the guy that we're kind of used to traditionally in the past, although it's like a 25-year-old mindset, which I think I'm kind of stuck in the late 90s, early 2000s anyways with my music and whatnot. But anyway, Yegor Demon is an incredible passer. That's what he does best, right? In the NBA, the stars are the ones with like multiple skill sets. Typically, you just get a guy who does one thing very well, and that's why he's in the NBA. If Yegor Demon is an excellent passer and creator in pick and roll, that's enough to be a lottery pick because he's 6'9", and he can shoot over the top of a defense, and he has incredible vision. He said last week on the coach's show that, hey, his assist numbers have gone up because we have more shooters than I did at Real Madrid. And he said, and I expected the next level with even better shooters for those numbers to even go up. So he's second in the Big 12 right now at almost 6 per game. He leads the team in steals. He's averaging 11 points per game, which is second on the team. So I think maybe we just have to adjust our expectations of, like, what do the numbers look like for a guy like this? What is the potential? They're drafting on perhaps kind of different unquantifiables at times with what the potential of a guy could be.
The steals thing is the number that I ignore probably more often than I should, because we're so geared, at least I'm so geared, to evaluate somebody's offensive game. And like you said, he's leading the team in steals. He does have active hands. With that length and the anticipation and the recognition, that I don't know whether draft nicks pay close attention to that, but when we're talking about the best point guard to ever play within this state's borders, we're talking about a guy who leads the NBA historically in assists and steals. It's like those two things go together. It's his ability to pass, another thing that makes him great defensively with the steals.
Yeah, he's a great passer. Like, his vision's incredible. There's times where guys aren't even ready for the pass that's coming in their in their bread basket, in their pocket. Like, Richie Saunders is elevated with Riegor Demon. They've been a nice 1-2 combination. Trevin Nell has nights where he's making 3 or 4 threes. It's been fun. Cannon Catchings made 3 threes the other night. Dawson Baker playing better off the bench. So that's fun to see. And then, yeah, defensively, steals are interesting too, because, like, it's who possesses the ball. It's not who creates a steal, right? It's kind of like tackles in football. We see tackles that are like, oh, he's super involved. It's like, well, he might have been the third guy there, and it was unassisted. And someone has to tackle somebody unless they score or go out of bounds. So sometimes tackles are inflated a little bit. But, no, I think he's a good defender. And, of course, they like 6'9". They like the upside. And he's been on people's draft boards for a while now. And I think people a couple weeks ago thought, oh, is he going to slide out of the lottery? Like, will he come back next year, perhaps? I haven't had that question, frankly. The answer has been no, by people who are more in the know than myself.
I think maybe that conversation for me stops if he can just continue to improve his three-point shooting, because then you're talking about a guy who passes well, hits the shots, does some nice things on defense, and easier said than done. I can't hit a three-point shot to save my life. I mean, it's insane that sometimes,
if he does that, Sean, he's a top 5 pick. Like, if his three-point shooting was 38% right now, he'd be a projected top 5 guy. That's the difference. Instead, he's like 10 or 12.
It's wild that one skill set could improve your life so much, and yet it's still hard to put together. How much are they working on that with him at practices and in the extra work beyond?
Tons. And early in the season, when BYU was playing an easier schedule, he was getting some really open looks. At one point, he was shooting 55% through 5 or 6 games, and that was a big surprise. Kind of a 33% guy at Real Madrid right now. He's at 30, like 29.6. So he went through a massive slump where he was 1 of 24. He's not going to shoot that bad ever again. I imagine he'll be kind of in that 33 to 35% range by the end of the season, which is a good enough number. He's getting used to the three-point line here. He's getting used to the defenses. It's the Big 12. It's a little more physical than it was at Real Madrid and that level, although it was really good in Europe. So he's adapting well. He's kind of coming out of a bit of a spell here, and he's playing some good ball. I'm excited to see how he matches up against a really good guard line for Baylor, who always has an NBA guy there. VJ Edgecombe, I mentioned, is that guy. Jaden Nunn, and they got a freshman, Robert Wright, the third, who's a really good player, as you guys saw last week. So I'm excited for the matchup. I think it's going to be a really good game tonight.
Jared Jordan, our guest here, talking a little red and blue, Utah and BYU, part of the conversation on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Now that you pointed out that 2-game trend, TCU and Utah Saturday, they've got a game on the road at UCF on Saturday. Players have to focus on Baylor tonight. We don't. We can talk about whatever. What are you looking for in that matchup on the road on Saturday?
Well, it's going to be interesting because 8 of the next 9 for BYU, as of now with net rankings, which fluctuate, are quad ones. So BYU's got to butter their bread in January and December, where they win tonight, they're 5-4, which, by the way, would be 1 game better than last year's BYU team did. Last year's BYU team was pretty good, man, 60th in the NCAA tournament. So that'd be nice. The only difference is January a little easier for BYU than it was last year. You had some winnable games against Oklahoma State. Utah obviously was a close one. Colorado, Cincinnati, TCU. if BYU comes out with 5 of those, including a nice win against Baylor, that'd be great because BYU does not have 2 things. 1, a 3-game win streak in the Big 12 last year. This year, they could do that tonight. And 2, a quad 1 win, which weighs heavily on Selection Sunday. So big game tonight. And then at UCF, because they're top 75 in a true road game, that's a quad 1 as well. BYU beat the Knights all 3 games last year, home, road, neutral, Big 12 tournament. But that is a tough place to play, man. They almost got Houston, who looks like the best team in the league right now. And so if BYU were to win that one, that'd be big because the Cougars have struggled on the road. Then you bring in an Arizona team that had an incredible comeback win last night against number 3 Iowa State. Caleb Love making a half-court buzzer beater to send it into overtime, and then they kind of take it to the Cyclones, who are number 3 in the country. I mean, it's the next 3 Tuesdays out of the next 4, by the way, for BYU: Baylor, Arizona, and Kansas. So it's no longer Pacific, Pepperdine, and St. Mary's, which is fun. Although we love the St. Mary's game, but it's like, man, you have 3 Gonzagas coming in.
That's a great way to illustrate on the basketball front how different the conference life is right now for BYU. We talk about it a lot with Utah, how different realistically is Pac-12 basketball, Big 12 basketball, same thing in football. And then, BYU, it's easy to forget when you're not in it every day that BYU was playing a pretty good independent football schedule on the strength of Tom Holmoe's ability to put those schedules together. And then in the West Coast Conference, you were one of the giants of that conference. And now you're, like everyone else, you're chasing after some really true blue blood programs.
It's great, and BYU's ready for this level. And so and they've been ready for a long time. It's just now fun to actually have the opportunity. And yes, sometimes it takes you take a step back to take a step forward, like BYU football did. And I know Utah is hoping that's the case for next year, right? In football. So yeah, it's awesome, man. It's fun to just have every game matters. And in basketball, we have more metrics to sort of quantify how important a certain matchup is that we don't have in football. So I actually kind of like I love both, but I like the sort of metrics that tell you, well, at UCF normally would be like, well, that's just a game you hope to win, right? It's like, no, it's a quad 1 that matters for the selection committee, ... I think it's great. And the Marriott Center is going to be rocking tonight. My only real question tonight is the following. Conor McGregor went to the Jazz game last night because he's here with Bucked Up, doing some promotions.
Yes.
I want him to come to the Marriott Center tonight. I think this would be the matchup we've never thought we'd ever have. Conor McGregor in the Marriott Center tonight? Come on.
You want to talk about oil and water mixing. Conor McGregor would burst into flames just walking on that BYU campus. I mean,
they can rededicate it after.
He's going to be up at. Let's be honest, he'll be up at the University of Utah campus before he's down there in Provo.
I don't know, dude. I'm hearing some things. Maybe he'll make an appearance.
Now the Bucked Up guys are connected down there, right? So that would make sense.
I think there's some connection there. Last night on Instagram or yesterday afternoon, he shouted out BYU men and women's soccer on Instagram or something, and I was like, where is this coming from? I think he went to an In-N-Out. Can you imagine you just pull up to In-N-Out and I don't know where they're at, Sandy, American Fork, Warm or whatever, and you turn around and there's like one of the greatest fighters in the history of the planet just sitting there with this big, massive gold chain and tattoos and button-down shirt and this accent you can't understand him. I mean, it's fun to have him around.
Yeah, my buddy Court McGee, who's still active in the UFC, sent a post out this morning that Conor McGregor was at Pleasant Grove High School's wrestling practice today. Like, can you imagine? You're just like the 145-pound wrestler at PG High School. You go in the room, it's that familiar, disgusting smell. You're just like, and then all of a sudden, Conor McGregor's standing there. You'd think you're having a fever dream.
The swish slash of your plastic bags to make weight, and then suddenly you turn and there's Conor McGregor. Yeah, just what in the world? Yeah, pretty well. I know Lopini Cattell, former BYU running back, works for the company, so who knows? I'm not saying he's showing up at the Marriott Center. I'm just hoping he does. I think that would be really fun.
I hope he does too, and I hope that he gets kicked out for bad language because he can't. Like, it's just going to be.
When he says certain words in his accent, they don't sound the same.
You know what? If Conor McGregor shows up for that game, and then like I see a post of him in the first half, I'm getting in my car. I'm driving down just so I can witness it in person, Jerem. Like
just two fighters. We just need to connect.
Not even about that. I won't even speak to him. I just want to go near enough that I can hear what he's saying, because that would be the wildest mix, the biggest clash of culture that Conor McGregor has probably ever experienced. Jerem Jordan for another couple of minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show. I got a couple of football questions for you, because that's why I like to live my life. The Super Bowl matchup is set. Kansas City Chiefs, once again, looking to go for a Super Bowl win. That would be 3 in a row. Andy Reid, who has his very strong BYU connections, obviously could make history. How much is Cougar Nation loving this? They've claimed Andy Reid more in these last couple of years than they ever did when he was with Philadelphia, for very understandable reasons. But if Andy Reid can win back-to-back-to-back Super Bowls, suddenly his name is right there in the conversation of greatest of all time.
Absolutely right. I don't know if he passes Belichick, but like the fact that he's taken a team to the Super Bowl 5 times in 6 years, never been done. They three-peat in the Super Bowl era, never been done. I mean, this is ridiculous. It is kind of a fun matchup. I know it's not the matchup all the fans wanted, just from sort of greatness fatigue, if you want to call it that. But I'm excited, man. It's going to be fun. I was hoping for the BYU beat these guys in college matchup of Josh Allen from Wyoming and Jaden Daniels from Arizona State, but alas, we did not get that. Andy Reid's been incredible. Obviously, what they've been doing is unbelievable. Hey, getting those 4th and 1 stops and quote-unquote spots from some of the conspiracy people. And, hey, Kansas City turned it over a little bit, still survived. They just seem to have the magic, that winning culture. They've got one of the best quarterbacks that has ever played, maybe the best when he's all said and done. Eagles have perhaps the most talented roster in the NFL, so it's going to be interesting. I don't really care who wins per se. I think Andy's legacy is pretty good. He can add to it a little bit. He can't take away from it. But yeah, he's an incredible story of a kind of a nondescript offensive lineman, GA turned one of the greatest, if not the greatest coach in NFL history. So at some point, and I know BYU fans don't like to talk about this. I feel like I'm the only one that said this out loud. At some point, he passed Lavelle in how great of a coach he was. Lavelle is revered, always will be. He's the GOAT at BYU. But in terms of like getting to the NFL and sort of adding to what he learned and did from Lavelle, it's been pretty cool to see that synergy between these two great coaches, that at that level, Andy took it to another level.
The other football question I have, Senior Bowl practices start today. The college football all-star games have now begun their little cycle. That is the pre-draft process kicking off this week, kind of in earnest. And I know BYU football retained a lot of the guys that will eventually be Sunday players in my mind, but in this particular pre-draft process, whose name are we going to hear the most?
I think Tyler Batty has the best chance to be the highest drafted guy for BYU. Caleb Etienne, Jacob Robinson are in the mix. Jacob Robinson, by the way, late add to the East-West Shrine Bowl with Tyler Batty. No guys in the Senior Bowl, which is kind of the premier one. I think if Darius Lassiter had come out, maybe he'd get a little buzz. Same with kind of Isaiah Glasgow, Jack Kelly. But there's not going to be a day 1 or 2 pick like BYU's had a couple of times the last couple of years with Zach Wilson and Kingsley Suamataia and others. But what you will see is, I think over the next 3 or 4 drafts, we're going to look back at that 2024 BYU football team and say, wow, there's a lot of talent there. Like we did in the 21 and 22 drafts for BYU, where you looked at that 18-19 class and you said, wow, you have another left tackle in the NFL, a wide receiver, a quarterback, a running back, and so on and so forth. It speaks to the team that BYU had, that they didn't have a day 1 or day 2 guy probably, yet they were a top 25 defense in many of the metrics, and they won 11 games. So it was a great team effort. It was a well-balanced team. I thought BYU had a good offense, a very good defense, and then an elite special teams that led to 11 wins, and they're trying to equal that or better it next year with another talented roster.
Well, Utah fans listening to this program hope that it doesn't improve next year for BYU football.
The feeling is mutual,
and that's just the way.
On the other side,
I'm looking at Jackson Dart on my television right now. He is down there as part of the Senior Bowl practices. I know he never was at BYU, but oftentimes we develop a certain following and interest in the local prospects. And
Absolutely.
He's a guy that his name is in that conversation as maybe being the third quarterback taken. I don't think he's going to end up there, but what are your thoughts on Jackson Dart, just randomly?
I think he made some money at the end of the year. Like he showed that he can play, I think, at the next level. And like we talk about the quarterback class being really good, and at the top, there's some really good ones. You like Shador, you like Cam Ward, but then you start to get like 4 and 5, and I don't know. You start to talk about Quinn Ewers and Rourke from Indiana. It's like, why couldn't Jackson Dart be one of the top 5 quarterbacks taken? I think he's going to make Utah proud here, and Corner Canyon has done such a great job in the past decade of producing these quarterbacks. Yeah, I think he's going to be in the top 5 hunt there. I'm excited to see where he goes, man.
Jerem, it's always a pleasure catching up with you. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it, and I'll say hi to Connor for you tonight.
Oh, wait. I have to ask you one more thing. I totally forgot about this.
Yeah.
A texter today, 9197, said, "Oh, see, I was listening to your Red and Blue segment from last week. I realized how familiar Jerem Jordan sounded." And then he referenced something called The Safety Zone, a show dedicated to teaching missionaries safety lessons. This is also part of the Jerem Jordan resume that I didn't know about?
Yeah. Put it on the IMDb. In 2018, the church had Spencer and I and another person put together these. We were the actors that put together these safety videos for all the missionaries. So they wanted it like Sports Center style, so that's why they brought Spencer and I in. So we did these, and the missionaries have to watch these. So they always say that too. It's like, oh, I had to watch those. I was like, yeah, I know you had to. So yeah, it was fun, and there were certain rules in that we discussed that I didn't even know about when I went on my mission to Brazil. So happy to be of service.
Amazing. Those are the deep cuts on the Sean O'Connell Show. Thanks, dude.
Yeah,
Talk soon.
Yeah, that's next level. Thanks, Sean.
Jerem Jordan, Red and Blue, part of our Big 12 at noon, brought to you by Mountain Land Supply. Visit mountainlandsupply.com. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, talk a little Utah women's basketball. Maddie Wilkie is supposed to join us. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
on that last offensive possession for Utah. Here's Enesh. Looking down low, feeds it to Jenna Johnson. Kicks out left side. Wilkie is wide open for three, and she nails it.
Maddie Wilkie, three-pointer in a 79-61 win over Kansas for Utah women's basketball. That sound courtesy of the Ute Sports Radio Network. Tyson Ewing, who does an incredible job on the call there. Speaking of Utah basketball, text Utes to 33986 to win a pair of tickets to see a home game. Next home game is tonight, Cincinnati. Tickets are available at utahtickets.com, or you can text in Utes to 33986. Joining us to talk a little hoop, Maddie Wilkie, the aforementioned player who hit that three-pointer. Maddie, you like listening to a little personal highlight there?
Oh, yeah, it's always fun for sure to hear it back. Obviously, I remember being in it, but it's kind of fun to relive those moments for sure.
Okay, so this is always interesting for me to ask athletes. How good is your memory of your performances in games? Like, we've seen the extreme examples where you can ask, like, LeBron James what happened 7 years ago with 3 minutes left on the clock against the Toronto Raptors, and he's got, like, that savant-type memory for it. Where do you fall on that spectrum? How well do you remember sequences, scores, your performance, all that?
I would say pretty well. Obviously, more different games better than others, but I would say I'm usually pretty well in tune with what's going on, and especially the good stuff. The bad stuff, I obviously probably don't want to remember that, but yeah.
Selective good memory. So you're able to block out the bads. I'm the opposite. I only remember the bad and stupid stuff that I do. I can't remember the good stuff.
I mean, I try my best to, but sometimes it doesn't always go as planned. But
all right, back-to-back wins for you and your team, Kansas, and then, of course, on the road at BYU, which for all the Utah fans, that's the most meaningful. That's the more meaningful win all the time. Look, in this transfer portal era, and when you came from Wisconsin, right? How strong of an understanding did you have of the Utah-BYU rivalry and how deep it was and how much it meant and sort of like the little cultural quirks of it before you arrived on campus?
Honestly, I had no idea. I didn't have a lot of knowledge of like Utah in general, just being from the Midwest, and like the Big Ten is usually where I was more surrounded by, so I was more familiar with that. And I didn't really understand it because football didn't play them my first year last year. And so women's basketball was kind of the first game that I experienced against BYU. And it was at the Huntsman Center. And I was like, wow, this is actually like a legitimate like thing. And it's not just like men's basketball or like football. It's also women's basketball. So I thought that was really cool. But I mean, that was the first time I've seen the Huntsman filled. Like there was times I couldn't even hear like anything because the crowd was so loud. And I mean, it was a good game, but I think we kind of blew it open, maybe like 20, 30 points. And like the crowd was still really into it. And usually at that point, I feel like the crowds usually like start heading out, but it was crazy. So I was super excited this year to play at BYU and just kind of get the other side of it. So yeah, it was so fun.
It's good to hear that. It is, look, it's a great rivalry, and it is, I think, underappreciated nationally. So someone coming from the Midwest where, I mean, let's be honest, sports, the Big Ten right now is kind of the king of the college sports world, given a national championship to Ohio State and all that kind of stuff. It's very strong in both men's and women's basketball right now. So knowing that, you came from that level of intensity and this rivalry still stood out to you, I think says something.
Yeah, and it's real. It's not kind of for show. Like I do feel like, I mean, obviously it's a rivalry and there's like red hates the blue and blue hates the red, but I would say like it's actually, I mean, the people that stand for their teams are genuine. So I feel like that's kind of the most important part, and they actually do care. It's not just like you kind of say it. So yeah, I've never been a part of something on either side of like even in men's sports of something this strong. And it's not just like it doesn't just happen in the week before. Like it's always a thing. Like the Utah BYU is actually like a thing year round, so that's also different than the other teams that I've been a part of.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Maddie Wilkie, our guest here, talking about Utah women's basketball on the Sean O'Connell Show. So, look, there's always a big emotional output, an adrenaline dump with a victory like that one, and sometimes that can hurt a team when you get that big moment, that big win, that big performance, whatever. To maintain consistency and to come back and have great practices and great performances after that can be a little bit more difficult. So what have you and what has Gavin Peterson and the rest of this team done to make sure that there is no drop-off after a big win against BYU on the road?
Yeah, I think Gavin does a great job of keeping us locked into one game at a time. And obviously we'll talk about the game the next day, and then after that, it's kind of done and it's on to the next. So I feel like he does a really good job of keeping us focused on what's in front of us and one game at a time. And then as a team, I felt like the win was good for us, obviously because of the rivalry, but also we just needed 2 wins together just to kind of get our swagger back and momentum back after that tough kind of few games we had. So obviously it was really fun and nice to beat BYU, but I think for us as a program and where we are right now and where we want to be, it was crucial for us to get that second win in a row just to continue on where we want to be.
What's it been like having Kennedy McQueen back in the lineup, easing her back in? She only had 11 minutes the other night, so easing her back in, coming off the injury. But what kind of difference does it make to have a talented player like that with some leadership qualities as well, back? And it's not like she was ever really away from the team, but it's different when someone's on the floor.
Yeah, she makes a big difference for sure for our team. I mean, obviously she's been here. This is her 5th year, so she knows everything about the program. She knows what we're about. So having her on the court just kind of brings a confidence and level of calmness to everyone around her, and she never takes a bad shot. Like, she's very consistent. So just having that consistency as a guard, playing with her is fun because she works so hard. People don't probably give her credit for her rebounding and defense, but she does a lot of stuff that isn't on the stat sheet. And that really helps our team. I mean, you can tell when she's not on the court. And then you can tell when she's on the court, she just makes things happen. So I'm super excited that she's kind of finding her way back. So I'm excited for the next games just to see her do her thing. And I know sitting out her not being fully back for the BYU game from her being from Utah, I know that was really hard. So I'm super excited for her just to be back and finish her last year here and just help our team in every way she can, because I know she's a major part of this program.
We had Coach Peterson on, I don't know, last week sometime, and I asked him if he can, in pregame, if he knows when it's going to be a good game, if he can sense when strong performances are coming or whatever. And I want to ask you the same question. Gianna Neepkins had a career night the other night, and Maya had a great game, and especially all of you in the starting lineup had a really high-quality night. Did you feel that, like, in warm-ups, on the bus ride, whenever? Can you tell when it's going to be a good night versus when it maybe takes a little bit heavier lifting?
I would say, obviously for the BYU game, there's always a lot more energy and amped up and just with that. But, I feel like yes and no at the same time. Like, obviously having Gianna as our key player, like, she's always herself. So she's so consistent, and I know she's going to do everything she can in that game. And she's always in the gym. So I kind of have no doubt with her, and she kind of leads the pack. But honestly, for us, it's just kind of how we start defensively, in my opinion. Sometimes our shots fall, sometimes they don't. Obviously, if we're hitting shots early, like, it's just more confidence and, like, gets us going. But, yeah, I would say with Gianna, like, I can never tell. She's always the same. I always think she's going to go off for 30 just because she's so locked in and prepares herself really well for leading up to the game for that week.
All right, for you personally, I watched Arizona Iowa State last night, and look, when you have a guy who hits a half court buzzer beater to send the game into overtime, 1 for 10 from three before that, okay, 1 for 10 before that moment, and then has the to shoot that shot, send it into overtime, and then hits a couple of threes in overtime. Maddie, I was never a good shooter. I was never a good basketball player, period. But if I go 1 for 10 in a game, especially in a game like a high-profile game where there's fans in the stands, I'm never shooting another three in my life. Like, do you shoot yourself out of slumps when you're on? Obviously, you just keep going. When it's tough for you, how do you manage it? Do you just keep shooting? That's what we saw last night, and I was blown away by it. And I guess that's what shooters do. But how do you manage when it's not going down, when maybe it doesn't feel like the stroke is there? How do you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard for sure. If as a shooter, your main job for the team is to hit threes and to shoot well. So when you're not, it's like, what kind of do I do now? But yeah, the only way out of it is to shoot out of it and just trust the work you put in the whole off season and like in the season right now, and just understanding that the team needs you to shoot it. Obviously, like if you don't take a shot that's for you, like you could turn it over. Like a shot is way better than a turnover, and that's what like Gav preaches, and like everyone has done the work, and you just kind of have to shoot your way out of it, which sucks, but that's the only way you can get out of it, really. It's just to shoot your way out of the slump. I mean, if you don't shoot, it's just, and you're thinking about, do I shoot it, do I not? It just affects your ability more, and it probably affects more parts of the game. So yeah, shooters got to shoot and just trust in the work that you've always put in. And I mean, shooters have the utmost confidence, I believe, too, just because you have to kind of have that. And so obviously him going 1 for 10, obviously no one wants that, but at the end of the day, like he trusts himself, his team trusted him, that he puts in work all the time, and all you need is to see one shot go in just to kind of let that confidence and the weight kind of off your shoulders. And the half-court shot was that, and then from there, yeah, just the confidence takes over and the training takes over. So
we could, like, you will do the Caleb Love thing. Like, your Maddie Wilkie is having a rough shooting night, but the ball's in your hands with time ticking down. You're not going to hesitate. You're still shooting your way out.
If the plays run for me, yeah, I will shoot it. But obviously, I have one of the best shooting guards in the country on my team too. So I also am aware of, like, also if she's open, I will get her the ball.
Okay.
Probably first.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Before I let you go, we haven't had a chance to talk to you. It's old news for you all now, but it still was one of the wildest things where, we love Lynn Roberts. We love Coach Rob. She ends up getting the Sparks job in the middle of a season. You guys are just getting things going, and Gavin Peterson gets elevated to the head job. And the reaction to that has been positive, universally positive, and obviously you've been playing very well. But I wanted to check in with you on what that transition was like for you, and just the job that Gavin Peterson is doing.
Yeah, so obviously it was a shock. I mean, Coach Rob was a big reason why I decided to come to Utah, is just the relationship we've had built and just who she is as a person. And then along with the staff, they're just genuine people. So obviously, like, I had a good enough relationship with her that her leaving wasn't something that I necessarily had planned or enjoyed hearing, but I also am very happy for her, knowing that she's at the next level, and I want to be a coach, so I understand that drive just to want to be at the next level. And I mean, she turned this program around and got us to where we are now. So I'm just super happy for her and grateful that I had the opportunity to play under her for a year and a few games. I mean, she gave me an opportunity to play at this level again, and kind of helped me find myself. So I'm just extremely grateful for her. And then when they told us that Gav had the head job, it was just a sigh, like my chest, just like I was able to breathe, because I'm like, oh, thank goodness, just because Gav did so much for the team when Lynn was our head coach. And so I still have, and I had trust in him that he was going to keep the program in the same direction. And then ever since he had the head job, there really hasn't been much change. I mean, obviously it's a different voice that we're hearing all the time, and the assistants are talking more and just different voices coming. But at the same time, I feel like we do a lot of the same things, and he recruits the same kids, and he's going to bring in the same type of girls to our team. So I'm not worried at all for where our program's headed. And then, I mean, he does a great job. Obviously, it wasn't easy for him to have to adjust that fast either into that head job. Obviously, there's things that I don't even know the head coaches do that he has to do now that he's never done before. But I think he's done a really good job of doing his job and then also maintaining our relationships and keeping the team first. So yeah, obviously it wasn't the news I intended to hear a few games into the season, but I think it worked out in the best way possible for our program for sure.
Well, so far so good under Gavin Peterson as head coach.
Yes.
And if you're going to
Yes.
replace someone as high quality as Lynn Roberts, it better be somebody good. So we've been impressed. Glad to hear that you are as well. And appreciate your time today. Good luck against Arizona and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maddie Wilkie, Utah women's basketball guard. Teams coming off back-to-back wins, Kansas and BYU. Next up will be Arizona at the Huntsman Center. You can hear it right here on ESPN 700. On television, it'll be a Fox Sports 1 game. 6:30 tip, and it is a power in pink game. So you're supposed to wear pink if you're attending on Friday as Utah women's basketball takes on Arizona. Love that. Great stuff from Maddie Wilkie. We're going to take a quick one here. Before I do, I want to remind all of you that we've got Utes tickets at 33986. Win a pair of tickets by texting Utes to 33986, or, of course, you can go to utahtickets.com. Also, 9 Inch Nails is coming. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM are welcoming 9 Inch Nails to the Maverick Center for their Peel It Back tour August 14th. Tickets do go on sale tomorrow at noon. You can listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts next week for a chance to win a pair of tickets. 9 Inch Nails at the Maverick Center. Love that. All right. I referenced this in my conversation with Maddie Wilkie. Caleb Love of Arizona last night had a terrible game, awful game. And then he's the guy who hits the buzzer beater to send it to overtime, became a hero in overtime. I want to talk about this level of irrational confidence and why it's so necessary in some sports. It's the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. I want to talk about a great conundrum in life. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. A little housekeeping. Jeff Schwartz is going to join us at 1:30 now instead of 1 o'clock. He's finishing up a doctor's appointment or something. Did you see on Twitter, by the way, Jeff Schwartz wearing Utah gear?
I did.
I do wish he would have zoomed out.
Welcome in, Jeff Schwartz.
He should have zoomed out a little bit because it just shows this broad, like, expanse of fabric with the Utah gear. It was him wearing it, but it's like he was worried about the Oregon backlash, and he didn't want people to know that his face was in there. So, anyway, Jeff Schwartz joining us in about half an hour here.
So you're calling Jeff Schwartz a coward? Is that what's happening here?
If you're trying to sensationalize, then sure.
Well, if the Ute sweater fits.
If the Ute sweater fits, wear it. That doesn't. Speaking of sweaters, look at what Kalen DeBoer is wearing at the Senior Bowl practices. He's got, like, for those who don't have ESPN on in front of them, I've never seen any Alabama-branded gear that is just that crimson with an elephant on it, like an elephant silhouette, not even the regular elephant crimson tide. Was that an actual Alabama sweater he was wearing?
That's a first for me, too, and I'm like, why? Where was this before? I might have bought a crimson elephant quarters in.
I need to know if that's officially licensed gear that he's got going on.
It's been weird seeing not seeing Nick Saban on the sideline, but also seeing how much more casual Kalen DeBoer looks in his Alabama gear than Nick Saban ever did.
I also think that Kalen DeBoer is either like he's on that Ozempic or something, because he was a big thick dude when he was at Washington, and it seems like he's deflating at Alabama. I don't know if it's the stress of the position or what, but okay. SportsCenter Top Plays just showed the thing I wanted to talk about. If you did not have a chance to watch any of Arizona versus Iowa State last night, you can at least catch the highlights. Number 3 in the country, Iowa State, against an Arizona team that has underperformed some expectations but has a bunch of really good players. And Caleb Love hits a buzzer-beater half-court shot to send it into overtime, all right? And he did so after a terrible night of shooting. He was 1 of 10 from three-point. He was just not having a great shooting night, and still – the team had the confidence in him. He had confidence in himself. And, of course, the situation with the clock expiring demanded that, somebody heave that shot up, banks it in, sends it to overtime. But then he continues, James, as we were talking about with Matty Wilkie, he continues to shoot. He hits a couple more three-pointers in overtime. After hitting one over the course of the 40 minutes during the game, he and then banks one in, and then he hits a couple more in overtime. It's that insane, irrational level of confidence that athletes have to have that just sometimes you see things that remind you of how ridiculous it is. The normal response to repetitive failure, especially repetitive public failure at any particular task, is to retreat, is to hide, is to stop doing that, is to do anything you can to make people forget how bad you are at that thing.
Yeah, let me do something else that I'm more confident in right now so people see me doing something well. That's the response. Or just run away from the situation altogether.
Right, and obviously in a basketball game you can't do that, but the ability, and it's not unique to Caleb Love. Obviously there are people at every level of basketball who are willing to do this, that are at every level of every sport that are willing to do this, that you just shoot your way out of it. And that's what Matty Wilkie was talking about. It's the only way to fix it. And we've seen it in every sport. Actually,
I think a founding father sang about this in a recent musical.
What? Wait, what?
I shoot my way out. I write my way out.
Is this a Hamilton reference?
Yeah. He wrote his way out, OC. Shooters shoot their way out.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm not fully in depth on the Hamilton. I've only seen it once.
Yeah, another chance for me to show off my musical voice there. With I did Frozen 2 last week for you. So
which yes, I was very impressed with that.
And then halfway through, I wasn't sure if I had the right tune.
You didn't know.
I was like, wait a minute, that's it, right?
It was the right one. You got it right. So you're displaying this right now.
Yeah,
you're displaying this phenomenon right now.
Shoot your way out.
Sing
your way out.
It's not just sports, by the way. every forward-facing, every public job requires an irrational level of confidence. And I'm thinking of every broadcaster. All of us have screwed things up so many times, and you just have to keep doing it. I'm thinking of every politician who has just like fallen short of the promises they deliver on. They just keep making those promises.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Get back on that promise horse.
Get back on the promise horse and just BS some more, ladies and gentlemen. But you think of all the people who have a presence on your Instagram or your Twitter feed or whatever. There was a time when it was like you're shouting into the void. You're making that preview video or you're doing your fashion blog or whatever for like just your mom, just your friends and family. You know how embarrassing that is? You know how hard it is to be consistent and to continue that? It's the real life equivalent or the social media equivalent, which is not real life, so maybe that's the wrong way to say it. But it is the layman's equivalent of being that shooter who keeps on shooting. We saw Cole Bishop on Sunday got a start in a playoff game. All right? Played pretty well, led the team in tackles. But there were a couple of moments, there were two plays in particular, where Cole Bishop, who we know is a great football player, the fact that he's on a roster and he's on a roster that was in an AFC championship game is obviously further testament to that. But he's playing on Sundays because he's a great football player. He got run over twice in that game. That's as embarrassing as it can be in football. Like, for somebody of his caliber especially, somebody with his physical style of play, to get run over, to bounce off a tackle, and to have some guy just, like, trample on your chest as he scampers on, that's as bad as it gets. To be able to get back up, dust yourself off, and go make the next play without thinking about that one, that is a superpower that athletes have mastered more than your average person, I think. And it's something we don't talk about enough, the psychological ability to dust off embarrassment and to dust off humiliation and to dust off losing and to just keep going. It's a thing, man. It really is a unique trait, as unique, in my opinion, as being, 6'10".
Yeah. I mean, I remember my high school basketball coach saying his saying always was, and I think he must have stolen it from an all-time great coach at a higher level, but he said, he'd always ask us, what's the most important play of the game? The next play. And I'm sure you had football coaches that said the same thing. Like, and that's kind of stuck with me ever since that year I played for him is that you really need to, in life and in any other job, whether you're in sports or not, you really need to be able to make a mistake and then shake it off and do better with the next thing you do. Like, it's so important in life and in sports. And we see that exactly what you're talking about with guys like Caleb Love last night against the number 3 team in the nation.
In baseball players might be the best at it.
Yeah, they fail all the time. Baseball players and golfers fail all the time.
If you're a baseball player and you fail 7 out of 10 times at bat, you're really good at baseball.
Yeah, you're a Hall of Famer.
That's insane.
300 hitters tend to get in the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
So baseball might be the best example of it, right? Where if you shoot 30% as a basketball player,
yeah,
you're not in the NBA.
You're not getting on the floor. Yeah.
You're not there, right? No. If you're Caleb Love and most nights you shoot 10% from 3, your coach says, don't take 3-pointers anymore.
They're like, we may not have you play, but you're certainly not shooting threes.
Like, it's a fascinating phenomenon, the ability to forget, and the differences in each sport in how you have to master that even more. Baseball, you really have to master it. Golf,
it's a good thing they do keep track of statistics, how many fairways you hit, that kind of thing, but it's a good thing that they don't publish like putting percentages widespread.
I need that now.
Because that that would be probably close to the 300 hitter in baseball.
Yeah, I need like a makeable putt percentage because there's some putts that
I'm
are just
sure
like
that
no one's gonna make them.
I'm sure someone's tracking it, but you don't hear it a lot like we hear 3-point percentage or batting average.
Mike Yam, he's a listener to the show, often a guest. Mike Yam is involved with Pine Sports, which is this like statistical sort of it's like a
analytics company.
An analytics company, thank you. An analytics company that has incorporated AI now, right? So find me like the real-time stats on the makeable putt percentage. I want the elite people in the world.
PGA, Live. Whatever.
I want those guys. The TGL guys, okay?
TGL, yeah.
The guys that are like on my television golfing because you have to be able to shake off failure. And it's something that I think we appreciate about youth sports. It helps us to develop character, and that's a big reason why people put their kids in sports. But there's some level where you go beyond what other people can do, not only in your physical abilities, and that's how you're able to play college sports, you're able to play professional sports. You have physical abilities that other people don't have. But you also have to have this thing we're talking about. You also have to have the thing where you don't care as much about failing as other people care about failing. I had that in the fight world. I wasn't particularly proud of being able to lose and then bounce back because why would you be able to be proud of losing, right? But there's nothing more embarrassing than when another grown man beats you up in front of either hundreds or tens of thousands or millions of people, however many are watching. There's nothing more embarrassing than that. You want to like curl up, and you really do, James, if we're being honest. You curl up and you hide and you eat your ice cream and you cry about it to yourself for a few days at least. But then you got to get back on the horse. You got to go back and you got to try it again. If only undefeated fighters or undefeated anybody's continued their careers, sports would be empty and boring. So you have to have this thing too. And I don't know why a wild three-pointer from a guy who was 1 of 10 from the field is the reason I'm talking about it today. But it just really brings to the front of your mind how aggressively confident you have to be as a elite athlete, as a pro athlete, as a high-level athlete, to just be like, you know what, failure is part of this process, and I'm going to accept that the same way that I accept success. In fact, I'm going to accept that even more often than I accept success, because it happens a lot more often in certain sports. Baseball, golf. I don't know what the stats really look like in tennis, but you probably miss more punches than you land if you're a good fighter. I don't know. It's wild. Why are human beings at that level able to just not care about failure?
I mean, it's that drive to win, right? You're like, and it's the drive to. If you did feel embarrassed by that, it's the drive to immediately try to change that. I want to feel better about myself. Let me go hit this 3 instead of airballing it like I did the last one.
The thing is, if Caleb Love doesn't hit that buzzer beater at the end, then a big part of the conversation, the articles written, whatever about that game are, hey, this guy, Caleb Love, who you thought was going to be good in this game, he stunk. He missed all of these three-pointers, and that's a big reason why the team was not able to win.
Hey, Caleb, how about trying a 20-footer next time, huh? Instead of 23 feet, all right?
So the idea that guy's just like, yeah, cool, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep shooting. You have to accept, if you want to be the hero, you also have to accept the idea that you're going to be the scapegoat. And this was a thing that people criticized LeBron James for a bunch of times, right? There was Skip Bayless built an entire career off of talking about LeBron not being clutch.
Even though he defied what Skip said over and over again. In about the middle part of his career, yeah.
But he would sit there on television and just be like, he doesn't want to take the shot, he passes the shot up, and if he doesn't pass the shot up, he's going to miss the shot.
LeBrick.
And it's like, dude, like you made how many millions of dollars saying that, spewing that garbage? But if you're the athlete that people are going to say that, you have to embrace the idea that if I make this shot, I'm the hero, but if I miss this shot, I'm the GOAT. The scapegoat, not the way the kids use
not the new
now.
GOAT.
Not the new GOAT.
The old GOAT.
Like if you're Dalton Kincaid or you're Mark Andrews,
Yeah.
and you want the play drawn up to you, it wasn't drawn up to Kincaid so much as it was drawn up to Andrews. You want to be in that position, you have to be willing to accept what you're going through right now.
Yeah. I mean, with Dalton, it's like you have to be willing to go for that ball, even though if you miss it and it's a close miss like it was, people are going to be killing you for a long time.
Anyway, way over time. Kind of did it on purpose, though, because we don't have Jeff Schwartz right now. So we'll get into hour number 3 next, including do we have like a the tanking update, the official James Peterson tanking update for your Utah Jazz. That's next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Fun fact, James Peterson actually played the accordion for the background music of this.
I'm playing it right now if you're watching on YouTube. Oh, I'm doing the politician thing where I promise something
You're
and
promising.
don't do it.
We're not going to deliver
bad.
on that. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. A new thing where we update you on the tank race for the Utah Jazz as they...
What else is there in the NBA? See, I didn't know there was anything else going on.
There's a few things going on.
Oh.
Mostly, though, it's just this. It's just teams trying to be bad.
Yeah.
So they get Cooper Flag.
Yeah.
All right, so how's it going, James?
Well, so let's update you on last night on what some of the tanking teams did last night. We'll start with that. The Jazz, of course, fell to the Bucks. We've talked about that quite a bit on the show today, including with Gordy Chiesa earlier today. The Hornets fell to the Lakers. A close win by the Lakers. That one I was on the edge of my seat hoping Charlotte, LaMelo Ball and company could pull that one out. Unfortunately, they fall short to the Lakers. Raptors beat the Pelicans, though. That one was a win-win because they're both near the bottom of the NBA. We would have preferred that the Pelicans had won because they have a slightly worse record than the Raptors, but we'll take a Raptors win as well. And then the Wizards fell to the Mavs. And then here's another team that has snuck into this tank race, OC. You noticed last week I wasn't updating people on where the Nets were.
Okay.
Now the Nets are below the Raptors in the standings.
Uh-oh.
So the Nets have played their way into the tank race as well. They fell to the Kings. And the T-Wolves, a bonus one. Remember, we're keeping an eye on the T-Wolves, too, because the Jazz have their first-round pick this year. They, unfortunately, beat the Hawks. We want losses from the T-Wolves because they're still right there in the playoff race. And it's 7th in the West, right on the edge of the play-in line. They got the win over the Hawks. And T-Wolves quietly starting to play much better. They moved up a couple of spots in the Western Conference standings. So there you go. What's on tap for tonight? Just the Jazz versus the Warriors in San Francisco, and no Draymond Green for the Warriors. So this could be that, and no Jonathan Kuminga as you heard on my updates. So this could be an opportunity for the Jazz to mess up in the tank race and maybe get a win. Not many of their players, of the Jazz's key players, are going to be resting in this game, at least as of a few hours ago. So that's one to watch tonight. None of the other teams in the bottom 5 or 6 are playing tonight. So, OC, with all of that, should we update the standings of the tank race here?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the Wizards still won, and their lead is expanding, even though the Jazz have continued to lose. Wizards now 4.5 games up on the Jazz for the worst record in the league at 6-39. Jazz at 10-34. They've lost 6 in a row, so they're doing their part.
Come on, Wizards. Help us out here.
I know, Wizards, they've been in a couple of close games of late, but not quite good enough to get some wins here to help the Jazz catch up. Pelicans are a half game behind the Jazz at 12-35. 2 games back in the win column, though. So that Jazz got a little bit of cushion there. 4th, Hornets 12-31. They're 7 games back of the Wizards. And then the Nets and Raptors are basically tied, each with 14 wins. 3 games separate the Jazz at 2 and the Raptors at 6. So it's tight between 2 and 6. And the Raptors are on a 4-game win streak, OC. So good job. Good job, Raptors.
Good job, you idiots.
Nets on a 7-game losing streak, and they've lost 11 and 12, including their last matchup with the Jazz. Remember the Isaiah Collier game winner at the Delta Center. T-Wolves, again, 7th in the West, 2.5 games up on the 11th place Warriors, 1 game back of the 6th place Clippers. Feels like they're going to be a play-in team, but Jazz fans should hope that that's the most they're going to be, because obviously you're 6 and above, you have no shot at the lottery. So there you go. That's your tank update. By the way, everybody's in our rejoin, and everyone's basically saying Cooper Flagg's the only prize in here. Just so everyone knows, there's other guys. If the Jazz don't get the number 1 pick, the 2 guys from Rutgers, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, either one of those guys would be franchise changers as well. At least that's what we think now. VJ Edgecombe from Baylor, who just did his thing against the Runnin' Utes, is also a guy who's highly regarded. I like the French point guard Nolan Traore, but he's dropping in the mock drafts for some reason, so maybe he's not quite the top 5 talent that people thought he'd be preseason. And, of course, Yegor Demin from BYU, the jury's a little out on him right now. I'm not as high on him as I am Traore, but a lot of draft experts are at this point.
So we talked with him. We talked about him with Jerem Jordan earlier on the show today, and I just want you all out there to know there is a chance that the Jazz, because 2 and 6, as you mentioned, that race is pretty tight, right? If the Jazz are at 2, they're going to take Harper or Ace Bailey or somebody like that.
Whichever one of the Rutgers players they like best, probably. Yeah.
If they're at 6, you're getting Yegor Demon, okay? Because Ryan Smith has made it pretty clear that part of his vision for improving BYU basketball and creating this whole dynamic with his NIL contributions and getting like the AJ DeBonsas of the world and the Yegor Demons of the world to consider BYU and even go to BYU, part of that vision is to create some kind of pipeline that ends up with the Utah Jazz. So if there's a justifiable pick that could demonstrate proof of concept for the ownership group, that's the move they will make. And if Yegor Demon is there and you're talking about, let's say the top 4 guys in this draft are all like pretty well, it's like a consensus, like these top 4 guys are the top 4 guys. You got to go with that guy. If you're talking about somebody who's already demonstrated that they like the state of Utah and would probably be more willing to stay beyond a rookie deal in the state of Utah, and that's that concept that you're looking to prove as ownership, who happens to have been instrumental in bringing this individual to the state in the first place, that's the pick you're going to make. So I don't have any animosity towards Yegor Demon. He just isn't a good enough shooter at this moment for me to be like, yeah, you want to pick that guy in the top 10.
And for me, it's beyond the shooting, and I haven't watched every BYU game, but the ones I have watched, beyond how tough it's been for him from 3-point range so far, especially in the last month or so, he just doesn't quite jump off the screen to me. For a guy who's regarded as a top 10 pick and at times has been slotted in as the 5th or 6th pick in the draft, I'm like, I don't know, I don't see future star player when I watch Yegor Demon right now. Now, could he develop into that? Sure. We didn't see future star player when Kawhi Leonard and Giannis were playing before they got in the league, and now they're 2 of the best players of their generation. So certainly he could develop into that, but he just it would seem to me that it's going to take a little bit of time for him to develop into that. Well, if they get into the top 3, when you talk about Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and everyone knows about Cooper Flagg, those guys are regarded as plug-and-play potential superstars. So that's why, if you're sitting here wondering, why do they want to lose? They're not just trying to get Cooper Flagg. They're trying to get in position to draft Cooper Flagg or one of those Rutgers guys, because there's a really good chance that they could be a superstar next to Lauri Markkanen as early as their rookie year.
When you talk about, like, even Cooper Flagg's going to require a certain amount of development, but where he's at right now, I mean, he's on your SportsCenter top 10 every time he plays.
Yes.
He's the front runner for Player of the Year in college basketball right now, and he's a guy who's just more ready-made, and you're going to have fewer questions about, like, all right, what do we have to do? How do we have to coach this guy up to get him in the next 3 to 5 years to where we need him to be? It's an accelerated timeline with him, and I think with Harper as well. But for the Utah Jazz, again, there's a lottery here. So even if you have the second best odds, you could get the number 1 overall pick. Even if you have the second best odds, you could get the number 7 overall pick.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of luck on your side with all of this, but what you can control right now is losing as many games as possible. Puts you in the best position, and then you got to keep your fingers crossed to get one of those top 3 picks, if not the number 1 overall pick.
And if you've been watching, like we watched last night against the Milwaukee Bucks, this team is obliging.
They are.
That effort.
The thing about it, though, and we've talked a little bit about this, Gordy's talked about it too on the show, they play hard and they're competitive in almost all of these losses. Like that's kind of the head-scratching thing about this Jazz team, is it looks like they want to win, but then somehow they lose at the end, which is what you want out of this year, should want, what a lot of Jazz fans do want out of this year. But it's one of those things where talent-wise, they're much better than most of the other guys in this top 6 of the tank race standings that we're calling it. But they're finding ways to lose.
Look, it's the win-win in a lose-lose scenario.
Yeah.
Like
you're competitive.
You're not going to win games, but
you're
competing, and you're hopefully getting some good reps out of guys that will still be on this roster. I asked the question of Utah Jazz fans while I was watching the game last night, because with the trade deadline approaching, you're probably going to part ways with one of the beloved role players in Jazz history. Like, Jordan Clarkson probably doesn't stay on this roster, and he's a guy who is very well loved by this community and by the Utah Jazz fans. So I asked the question, who's your favorite role player in Utah Jazz history? I got some really good answers. I'm going to hear what James thinks about it. And Jeff Schwartz is going to join us at some point as he finishes up.
Does he have Jazz role players he really likes?
I'm sure he does. He's a huge Utah Jazz fan, Jeff Schwartz is.
Oh.
Just kidding. But we hope he has an opinion on it.
Maybe if he doesn't have Jazz ones, we can ask him favorite role players across sports, I suppose.
We could.
What is he? Is he an NBA fan though? He's
a Laker guy.
He's a Laker guy. Okay, so he's probably. Oh, that's right. Grew up in SoCal, so he probably has some favorite Lakers he could give us.
Yeah, he's definitely like a Laker guy from before it was cool to be a Laker guy. So when you grow up there, you get a pass.
Absolutely.
Sean O'Connell Show continues on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
And so here is Mahomes lining up with a 3rd down and 9 just outside the Buffalo 35. He's in the gun with P. Ryan to his right. Trips on the far side. Shotgun snap. Tooney, a left tackle block. He throws to P. Ryan, the catch on a lunge at the 35-30. Breaks a tackle down the far sideline. 25 down the far sideline. 20 and knocked out of bounds at the 18-yard line of the Bills. Oh my goodness, you can feel it inside the stadium. The clock is ticking. A big-time play. Samaje Perine, a catch and run of 17. It's a 1st and 10 for the Chiefs at the 18 of Buffalo, and the clock is ticking, and the Bills have no way to stop it. Out of timeouts.
That's a highlight from the AFC Championship game. Samaje Perine for the game-sealing 1st down. 32-29 was the final score. Bills go home. Chiefs go on to play the Eagles in the Super Bowl. You can hear that right here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We are your home of the NFL playoffs in the state. All right. Jeff Schwartz had a doctor's appointment and was going to call us as soon as it was done. So we're going to forgive him if it takes a little bit of time. You know how doctor's appointments are. It's usually you're at the whims of the medical professional and how quick you're able to get in and things like that. So we'll get with Jeff when we have a chance to get with Jeff. I'm not going to be bothered by him because he's always so consistent with us. I asked a question on Twitter, James, about the favorite role player that Utah Jazz fans have ever kind of attached themselves to in the history of being a Utah Jazz fan. Now, I did this because I think we're going to lose Jordan Clarkson before February 6th. I think that he's going to be traded away, and he is one of those guys who Jazz fans seem to love. He seems to really enjoy Utah. He's been embraced by the community. He has embraced the community. And, look, his game is a super high-quality game. 6th man of the year back in, 21? So Jordan Clarkson, awesome player.
This has been the best years of his career since he joined the Jazz. So he certainly enjoyed his time here.
So his prime has been in a Jazz uniform. Now, I disqualified real all-stars. Like, you can't call people who are the best player on the Utah Jazz team a role player. All right? Even though that guy hasn't always been an all-star. I wanted to take the Gordon Haywards out of the discussion and take the Darren Williams out of the discussion, things like that. Your favorite Utah role player, and we got some awesome answers. Jay Crowder, love the tenacity that he played with. Every team needs a guy like that, absolutely. Jay Crowder was a big fan favorite.
Yeah,
in the brief time he was here.
He established himself, as you said, a brief tenure here in Utah, but he established himself as one of those fan favorite hard-playing role players in that it was only like a year and a half that he was here.
Joe Ingles, got Joe Ingles several different times. Joe Ingles, I think, hit the Utah Jazz fans on like 3 different fronts. Because, A, Joe Ingles had the charming accent and was very giving with his time and, did radio hits consistently, was a vocal presence on that Utah Jazz roster. Another reason why Utah Jazz fans love them some Joe Ingles is because every single one of us knows a guy who looks exactly like Joe Ingles and is built exactly like Joe Ingles who can just ball like crazy. You know a guy that has been tearing up the Buttercup 8th Ward church ball circuit that looks just like Joe Ingles. And Utah Jazz fans, I think, loved him for that. And then, of course, he was very, very public with his family and with being parents of an autistic child. And this is a very family-oriented state. And people got behind his cause and things like that. So I think that Joe Ingles really plucked at the Utah Jazz heartstrings in like 3 different ways. And that was a big reason why he came in from several respondents as the favorite.
Yeah, and he was, in addition to how outspoken he was, he had the fun trash talk banter that you could tell was happening while it was happening, you couldn't hear it, but you could see him mouthing off to whoever he's guarding and trying to get in their head, and he's blowing kisses to the Pistons bench after hitting a corner three because they were clearly John with him, and he's blowing kisses to them. Several of our responses referenced the Headband Joe when he had the cut on his head in Memphis, and they had to tape up his head and make it look like he had a headband on. Yeah, he's an all-time Jazz role player.
Devin brought in Mehmet Okur. Now, Mehmet Okur was a one-time All-Star, so he's supposed to be disqualified from the competition here.
Most of the time, he was one of those secondary players, so I guess we can let it slide.
Matt Harpring also came in on the same answer. I thought we'd get just as many Matt Harprings as we got Joe Ingles, because Matt Harpring is like he's the same thing with Joe Ingles without the accent.
Yeah, and in the trash talk necessary, but they called him Little Jerry. Like they talked about how his personality and the way he played.
The chicken from Seinfeld, Little Jerry.
He had the chicken from Seinfeld.
You know, I had a dog named Little Jerry.
Little Jerry Sloan. Did you?
I did.
Little Jerry, as in Jerry Sloan, but yeah, the chicken fighting Little Jerry as well. No, just the tenacity he played with reminded a lot of people of the coach Jerry Sloan, and yeah, for me, I think he's up there, top 3 Jazz role player for me.
Did I ever tell you about the time that I ran afoul of Matt Harpring?
No.
So it was my first radio job, and I was doing a morning show with Hans Olsen, who now is across the street, directly opposite us. And Matt Harpring was on the broadcast at that point, and he was doing this thing where he was experimenting with these catchphrases. He was doing the bank is open.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just couldn't stand the bank is open one. All right? Now, at the time, I'm like a 25-year-old, insufferable, egotistical, even more so than I am now. Okay? And I'm just making fun of Matt Harpring openly on the air for his bank is open. Just like, the bank is open. That's the worst. I spent like 5 minutes just tearing him down, right? And then immediately after the morning show, went to shoot around, and he was there. and had obviously been listening. And I was just like, oh, that's not good. Because, like, look, Matt Harpring is, what, 6'8"?
He's a big guy.
He's like 6'8", 6'9".
He was built too.
And a big, like,
there's a reason Bowler's seemingly favorite thing to say about him on the air when he was playing was that he played high school football.
The football
he was
guy.
He was a big guy.
He's a big old guy, and he just, like a big square-jawed guy that gives you like the kind of like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed vibe. Yeah. And I was just like, man, that was a good lesson for me to learn very early in my radio career. That if you're going to make fun of people, if you're going to say stuff, you are probably going to have to see them face to face at some point.
Be prepared for the possibility that they're listening.
Yeah, we're in a big city. It's a small town though.
Yeah.
Like there are over 1 million people in the Salt Lake Valley, but you're going to run into them. That's just how it works here. So
no, loved Matt Harpring as a player. I'm with you. Didn't love him as much as a broadcaster, but he did it. I mean, he wasn't terrible. He did a really good job alongside Bowler for a long time.
Adam Keefe coming in.
Adam Keefe, okay.
He's just the redheaded version of Matt Harpring.
Yeah, not as good of a shooter. Harpring could light it up, but anyway, yeah.
Blue Edwards has come in a couple of times.
That's a little before my time.
That's a deeper cut. That's for the older generation.
Yeah.
Blue Edwards was awesome.
I've heard of him, but a little before my time.
Kyle Korver or Memo. From Ben Scott. Korver, he was a sharpshooter. At one point, he was like the second best three-point shooter in the league.
And the ladies loved Korver when he was here.
Yeah. Kyle Korver looks like Ashton Kutcher.
He brought a lot of women Jazz fans into the game.
He's a handsome fella who could shoot the lights out.
Yeah.
And, by all accounts, nice fella away from the court.
Yeah. Brian Russell is probably my favorite.
Brian Russell was amazing. Brian Russell was awesome. The only bad thing about Brian Russell is when they did that Brian Russell versus Michael Jordan one-on-one game but they had a Michael Jordan impersonator show up. Did you hear about this?
I did.
Oh, James.
I'm going to have to look it up.
You're a young guy.
Yeah.
This was like, I don't know, this is probably 15 years ago. And it was down at the point of the mountain. There was like, now it's like the unique makeup factory or whatever. But that used to be a basketball facility.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was supposed to be down there. They were doing like a charity event where it was going to be Michael Jordan versus Brian Russell playing one-on-one basketball. And the whole thing was like they were going to sell tickets and they were going to raise money and it was going to be this big thing. And everyone got really, really excited about it. Except, of course, Michael Jordan's not doing that.
And this time, Russell's going to push off of Jordan and hit the game winner.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the long and short of it was the company or the facility or whoever it was that was organizing this event had Brian Russell committed.
But not Michael
But
Jordan.
couldn't get Michael Jordan, so hired a Michael Jordan impersonator, like a look-alike. Like one of those people that stand on the boardwalk in Vegas.
Were they a play-alike or just a
There's no
look-alike?
such thing as a Michael Jordan play-alike.
Kobe.
So
R.I.P.
So it just crashed and burned. It just ended up being the most disappointing, ridiculous thing. That goes down in Utah Jazz lore for sure. But Brian Russell was the absolute
That's
man.
like, I didn't see, I'm completely ignorant of all of that. That's like the Malone wrestling Rodman in WWE right after the finals too. Like,
you didn't know about that either?
Oh, I did. I was saying
okay.
I was saying that's right there with what it should have been.
Yeah.
Was Malone versus Rodman, Russell versus actual Michael Jordan.
Raja Bell coming in a couple of times.
Raja is also.
I'll tell you why Raja Bell was so great as a Jazz role player, because he was like almost not a role player. He was almost good enough to be a star. Raja was really, really something. And especially defensively, and what he was able to do against, like, very specifically Kobe Bryant made him special. So Raja Bell coming in from a lot of our listeners. The Hangry Hippo on Twitter says, easy, it's Brian Russell. Wait, Greg Ostertag. Wait, Paul Millsap. Wait, Blue Edwards. Wait, Antoine Carr. Wait, Luther Wright. Wait, Todd Fuller. Wait, Ruben Nemhard. Wait, Olden Polynice. Wait, Gordon Garichik. This just way too many names. Way too many names coming in. But I think a good illustration. So we will probably in the next week or so be bidding a fond farewell to one of the great role players whose name will eventually appear on these types of lists for people. James, what's going on back there? You're freaking me out. I think James might be getting Jeff Schwartz on the phone as we speak, maybe.
He that was Jeff. He said that he didn't have very much time today and wants to reschedule tomorrow. So we'll get him.
Okay, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
We'll get him on tomorrow. He
I
did say he would be willing to do it, but with us, we'd only have a few minutes with him. He says he can do 1 o'clock tomorrow.
I would rather have more time with Jeff than try to cram in 5 minutes to talk about the AFC and NFC championship games. So appreciate Jeff calling us, and we'll get him on tomorrow instead.
Yeah, the caller ID had me a little bit confused. He must be my caller ID when you don't have it. When people don't have it saved in my phone, it comes up. My father-in-law's name comes up because I'm on their family plan. Maybe he's on a family plan with someone else as the guy, because it was not his name that came up. I'm like, who's this? And it turned out to be Jeff. So.
Maybe Jeff Schwartz is a pseudonym.
Hey, yeah.
Maybe he's got a fake name.
Tune in tomorrow to find out.
I got this on Twitter. Anthony Edwards is a Michael Jordan play-alike. Okay. Anthony Edwards, when this whole thing happened, was like 6 years old.
Yeah, let's have Anthony Edwards play Brian Russell.
Kindergarten Anthony Edwards could not have played Brian Russell.
He was the Michael Jordan impersonator?
That would be amazing.
A 6-year-old Anthony Edwards?
All right.
Man.
We're going to give away some tickets with topical trivia next. Then we'll get you ready for the drive with Spence Checketts. Want to remind all of you out there that our ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM cash kickoff is happening, and it's happening right now. $1,000 cash to help pay your bills. If you text STASH to 508-777-1000, you get a chance to win. STASH to 508-777-1000. That's STASH, not like short for mustache. STASH to 508-777-1000. This is a nationwide contest. I've got Billy Idol tickets to give away next. You just have to answer one easy question. We'll close it out on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Two Billy Idol tickets at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. If you could answer this question for me. Maddie Wilkie joined us on the program. How many points did she score for the Lady Running Utes against BYU? Maddie Wilkie scored how many points against BYU in their last game. They got Arizona up next. 877-353-0700. 2 tickets to Billy Idol. If you could tell me how many points Maddie Wilkie scored against the Cougs in a Utah win. Wrapping things up here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Time to talk with Spence Checketts, who hosts The Drive from 2 to 6 p.m. Crosstalk is brought to you by our good friends at Advanced Window Products. If you need new windows, make sure you buy direct from the only local manufacturer in town, Advanced Window Products. Sales, installation, warranty, service, all of it is done in-house with no middleman markups. $2,500 off, 10 windows or more at advancedwindows.com, 801-850-9100. Tell the mayor of Sac Lake City, Nate Orchard, that OC sent you. Spence Checketts in The Drive up next. How are you, sir?
I'm well, Sean. Couple things for you today, sir. First of all, nice haircut, Elder.
Okay, thank
High
you.
and tight. The fade.
Okay, yes.
Do you go somewhere to get it cut, or do you?
This one I cut myself.
You cut it yourself?
Yeah.
That's not a skill I ever had.
I don't know if it's a skill I have.
It looks
but
good.
It
looks good.
I get mad paying $50 for a haircut, so I don't do it.
Yeah, I wish it was only 50. To be honest with you, couple things for you today. First of all, the way too early odds to win the college football national championship released yesterday. At the top of the Big 12, Kansas State and the University of Utah.
Okay.
Now plus 25,000. So if
to
you
win the national championship.
yes, so if you bet a grand, you get $25,100. So it's not like
wait, plus 25,000.
Correct. Bet a grand, you win 25,000.
No. You bet 100, you get 25,000.
I thought it was a grand.
No, it's 100. All that's based on a $100 bet.
Then I'm putting that down.
Yeah,
I'm doing that multiple times.
that's $100 bet. If you bet 1,000,
250.
you get $250,000.
I'm putting 1,000 down today.
Okay, there you go.
So BYU plus 50,000, but K-State, Utah at the top, and then our guy. I think this was Bill Conley, friend of the show.
Yeah,
he projects the 12-team CFP next year, and your number 3 seed is the University of Utah.
Wow.
So look, I know it's January, and there's a little bit of time between now and the fall. But what does that say to you? Is that a Kyle Whittingham? Like it's not Arizona State, it's not Colorado, it's not BYU, it's Utah. Once again, is that just we're going to bet on that coach?
Yes,
it has to be, right?
That's what that is. That's two things. That is, we don't actually want to do the homework and go take a deep dive into the Big 12 teams and what their rosters look like right now, and figure out who has the most questions to answer. But that is. You can go one layer deep and you can say Kyle Whittingham is a great coach and Morgan Scalley is a great defensive coordinator who's got a ton of talent returning on that defense. So I believe in this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many questions on the roster. I'm sure. Does ESPN make you sign in every time you try to grab a ESPN Plus article?
Yes.
Okay.
It's annoying.
It's really annoying.
It's the worst.
Yeah. And so
I feel like that lady who went viral a couple weeks ago. Like, stop making me log into everything. I'm so sick of logging in. I waste so much time in my life logging into stuff. And you know what is the bane of my existence? 2-factor authentication.
Oh, don't get me started. I don't do that unless I have to. Like, unless it's vital information, financial or whatever.
Yeah, but now everyone makes you do it, though. Now, like, I opted out of it for so long.
Yeah.
And now you're just, like, you want to sign up for a rewards program.
Yeah.
For like at Chipotle, you got to have 2-factor authentication on that business now. Can't stand it.
The worst is Walgreens, where it's like, hey, here's your email, here's your reward. It's like 5 steps. I'm like, and they don't want cash, so you have to go through the card process. Big 12 champ, University of Utah. That's the pick. And they would play.
I'm actually very surprised by that.
I saw it today. I was like, what's going on? So they would play the winner of Boise State, Penn State. Let's break this down. So how does that work if it's Penn State round 2? No, like truly. Again, way too early. We know the deal. This is for clicks. This is for attention.
Are you sure you're looking at the 2025 projection?
January 27th, 2025. Bill Conley. Projecting how the college football playoff for the 2025 season could play out.
I actually don't like that. I wanted the chip on the shoulder especially for all the newcomers in the program.
Yeah.
I wanted Utah to be able to say all through spring, all through summer conditioning, all that to say you had one bad year and now nobody believes in you.
Well, Kyle will still do that no matter what. First round, LSU at Oregon. Winner plays the number 1 seed, Ohio State.
Uh-huh.
Second round, Boise State, Penn State. Winner plays Utah. Iowa State, Notre Dame. So they have 2 from the Big 12 getting in. Winner plays Clemson. South Carolina, Georgia. Winner plays Texas. They have 2 Big 12 teams getting in. But the Big 12 champ, they're predicting Coach Witt, University of Utah.
Well,
and Vegas says it's K-State and Utah at the top of the conference if you want to put a little cheddar down.
All right. Well, that's awesome. That's fun to see for Utah fans who have needed a little injection of optimism into their life. I would prefer the opposite. I would prefer the lack of respect. I would prefer we don't believe in you guys anymore because you're not going to stay healthy again this year or whatever. But I think that is an homage. That's a nod by the media, by the progenitors of that article to say, we know that when Kyle Whittingham has a healthy roster, he's going to field a competitive team.
Yes, that has to be what it is. Ultimately, a commentary on who's coaching the team. We did talk about this because, like Ohio State, they returned most of the defense. All the offensive line is back. And look, I'm comparing Utah to the national champ and the team that's favored to win the national championship next year. But there is this narrative that every team has to rebuild every single year and you have to fill every position. And the blueprint says if you can return the bulk of a good defense and the trenches, your offensive line, what Ohio State did. And look, obviously Ohio State was able to get a lot of really, really good players. I'm not saying that they didn't, but that's kind of what the Utes did, and we'll see how it works out. There's just a lot of questions offensively. It caught me off guard that we're doing the way too early thing, and guys that know what they're talking about are already picking Utah as the favorite to win the Big 12. But maybe, to your point, as the home of the Utes, we just go all in on how horrible they're going to be to try to make that chip on the shoulder a boulder. Maybe that's our approach on the network. Who knows?
Look, it's cool to see that, and it is way too early, and you're going to have to see how the progress goes through spring ball. You don't get to see it. You'll have to hear it, how progress and health goes through spring ball and fall camp. But the reasons for optimism with Utah football are very real. Like Spence said, the trenches are healthy, are in a good spot, I will say. They're in a good spot. The defense returns a lot of very important players. Even though you did lose some, you return a lot of very important players. And then, you've presumably bolstered your playmaking ability at the most important position in all of football by bringing in Devin Dampier. So onward and upward. Let's go.
And $100 bet gets you $25,000.
Yeah.
I'm doing that, man.
Go for it.
Are we allowed?
For a national championship.
Yes.
So here's the thing. Big 12 championship, whatever those odds are, play it, baby.
Sure.
A national championship, you got to have an Ohio State roster to win a national championship.
Is college football now the NBA? Are the Utes the Jazz at this
college
point?
Football already was the NBA.
That's really depressing.
When is the last time? Name for me the last time a Cinderella underdog story won a national championship in college football.
Rudy, Notre Dame.
1984.
Was that Rudy and Notre Dame? Oh, that was BYU.
I mean, when is the last? It doesn't happen.
Yeah. That's depressing.
No, it's not, because a national championship.
It's kind of depressing.
National championship is not the only thing that makes your season worthwhile.
Yeah, but look, for me, if we're not trying to get to the top of the mountain, what are we doing here? Okay, who will win? Will the Jazz win the NBA Finals first, or will Utah win a national championship first?
I actually thought about putting a poll question out about this. Mm-hmm. Which team is most likely to win its ultimate prize first?
Yeah.
Utah Hockey Club, Utah Jazz, Utah Utes, BYU Cougars.
Are we talking national championship?
National championship. The most likely is Utah Hockey Club winning a Stanley Cup.
It is.
The second most likely is Utah football winning a national championship.
Mm-hmm.
The third most likely is BYU, and the fourth most likely is the Utah Jazz.
That's so depressing. But probably not wrong. What about RSL MLS Cup?
Well, you can only do four answers, and I went with four that people would care about.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, you're going to hurt Trey's feelings today. Trey loves crosstalk, as you know. You're going to make him very, very sad.
The thing is, though, you've already got one of those. The state already has an MLS championship.
Yeah, and it really moved the needle.
An MLS Cup championship. It as much as I tease you soccer heads, like, that really is an amazing accomplishment, and it's something that everyone in this state wanted for such a long time, like that level of professional success. They checked the box. The Jazz, beloved as they are, with 2 of the 50 greatest players in the history of the NBA, we're not able to do so. It makes me – I lose faith that they will ever be able to do so if they couldn't with John and Carl.
Well,
and Jerry Sloan.
Well, and also we don't have to do a ton on this. It's just a different era in pro basketball. And it has been for about 4 or 5 years where it is becoming clear. And I think the NBA has to do something about the structure where you do have at least a quarter of the teams every year that have zero chance. And so they're not going to field a serious team. And then it's hard to really accurately analyze whether or not the good teams are historically great, because what we have now, like OKC is on pace, Cleveland's on pace for 70-plus wins. And that in and of itself is amazing, but they're not near what the 96 Bulls were that won 72 games, because back then they were playing good teams most every night, not every night. Now you have 8 to 10 teams every year that are intentionally not trying to win. And therefore, these teams that I think are good but not historically great are going to rack up 70-plus wins because they beat up on so many bad teams. And, the issue with trying to talk about whether or not the NBA has a problem is they just signed a $73 billion TV deal. And they can expedite lack of domestic interest because of their international revenue streams, because they're a lot bigger in Europe and obviously overseas than pro football is. But pro football has the domestic interest. And so, I think the NBA has an issue. I don't think they believe they have an issue, and I don't think they're going to do anything about it because this is just kind of the deal, and they run that league like a Fortune 500 company, like a business. That's all that matters.
If they don't have a revenue problem, then they don't have a problem.
And that's the deal. But we're here in Salt Lake City, and we can just talk about how the new era of pro basketball makes it really, and it's always been really hard, but now it almost feels like it's really impossible. And I think a lot of Jazz fans are wondering whether or not, really, legitimately, are we going to be the city that has a pro basketball team for 75 years and never wins a championship?
The only, I guess, glimmer of hope that I will offer is if the Milwaukee Bucks can do it, so can you. If the Denver Nuggets can do it, then so can you. It's going to take international players because, that's just one of the trends in the NBA right now. Salt Lake City is not going to be the place that's going to attract the super team of young American players. Unfortunately, it just isn't ever. But with international players, a dude from Serbia would love to live here.
Drafted 43rd. Giannis mid-first round. Yeah, that's the unicorn you have to find. And the Jazz have a very good international player in Lauri Markkanen, but Lauri Markkanen on OKC or Boston's their 3rd or 4th best player. And he's the best player the Jazz have. So we'll try to make it interesting today. Talk a little Jazz hoops. The race for the bottom. They're 1 game behind Washington.
Well done today, James Peterson.
Good job, James.
Especially with your tanking update. Sean O'Connell Show is done. Take a listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud part of Utah's